Sup, my fellas, don't forget to leave feedback and enjoy the story. It is nighttime outside, but we all hear a baby crying. The man in the house, surrounded by all sorts of gadgets, cannot understand where such a sound comes from, crying baby. But he takes his axe from the wall and decides to check it, because he thinks that some rat may have gotten inside. He wants to go there and check because he thinks that someone has come for a reason, but to come and clean his house. He intends to be serious, for the man is a hunter. He also thought that somebody who had avoided all the traps that were put around his house and had hidden his presence surely must not be an ordinary creature or a human being, but it is not so easy to fool a hunter's ears. He would be in contact with the beast so quickly that it would not even have time to attack him. But as soon as the hunter rushed into his barn, with his axe in his hand, he saw no one. He thought he had made a mistake. He even thought that he had gone a little crazy with the news that he and his wife could not have a baby. Was that not why he was imagining things? But when he looked ahead, he noticed that there was a small child in the haystack. The hunter was very surprised and immediately held him. He could not believe it. He was so happy. He had enjoyed the moment so much that he had not even noticed when his wife walked in. She asked her husband Vincent what had happened to disturb her in the middle of the night. He asked his wife what had happened, that his dear Alina had woken up. But she immediately went to him and asked what he had in his arms. Was it really a baby? Vincent didn't know what to answer. He ran from side to side. He didn't understand what was going on. But he had come to his senses and decided to say that it must have been his and his wife's baby. We have before our eyes the story that on that day something very like magic had happened, because after he had opened his eyes and waved his hands, the wind had blown from somewhere and the clouds began to gather. Soon it began to rain, and then a sparkle poured out on the completely dry land, and the villagers sang a song of happiness. It was he who protected the village from danger, and it was thanks to him and his mystical power the village found peace and tranquility, no more thirsty for water or gold. But that man could not stop learning for the villagers, and people thought his ability mystical and called him a magician. We are again transported to the present, where our hero is asked, what is he doing? Is he reading a book? In front of our face we see our little white-haired boy, whose name is Arian Shiren, who recently turned 12 years old. And then we see his aging father, Arian Vincent, who had long since turned 30. He was glad his son had finished with the trees so quickly, so he wanted to go home to eat with him. He whirled him around as if he was playing for the last time. Our hero asked his father what he had to do to create magic at home. Vincent was puzzled when he heard that. Did he really bring such a book to his son? But Vincent decided to ask his son questions too, what magic really is, because magic can be also called something that can defeat a bear with one arrow or tear down a tree with one blow of the axe. He asked if this was magic. Father and son were walking along the road, so they were met by children. They wondered why our hero stayed at home all day reading books instead of going for a walk with them. They wondered if he really knew how to read and why he had brought such a thick book again. They even said that our hero did not look like his father because he was very frail, and even that he had been picked up and his old parents had abandoned him, for Shiren was very strange. All this was heard by Vincent, who certainly didn't like all this. He was very angry because how some little kids dared to call his son names, but after looking at his son, who was burning with happiness, just saying that such opportunities in magic are simply something, because you can bring down a tree with one blow, just a miracle. Vincent immediately calmed down and told our hero that as he had helped our hero, that is why tomorrow they will go to the city together and will buy a lot of favorite fruits. Our hero was happy, but Vincent was wondering why he was such a good-for-nothing father. But he knew that no one can say that our hero is not his real son, but our hero dreamed of one thing, learning magic. Our heroes had already driven in a cart to a town in the province of Tormia, Krias. Our hero was very happy because he saw the city for the first time. He had seen all the shop windows and the merry people. They were buying clothes, eating and laughing. But his father distracted him and told him that he had to wait for him at Grandpa Martin's store. So until he had finished his business, he must not move from his seat. He had said this to our hero just in case, as he must not go to the back lanes or meet aristocrats. Vincent understood that our hero had always obeyed him, but he still needed to be worried in a city like this. Vincent left on the bandwagon, and our hero remained behind to write the prices of the fruit on the signs. His grandfather praised him, for he had indeed written very well. He also expressed his gratitude, for it was very difficult for Grandpa to work alone these days. Our hero was very happy to have such company, so he said that he was glad to help. Grandpa was looking at him and could not admire, because our hero was indeed very smart. But his grandson Martin does nothing but get into trouble. Then our hero asked his grandfather if he knew anything about magic, but grandfather did not answer him, thinking that our hero had offered him something to eat. Grandfather was laughing, and our hero was trying to explain what he wanted. Our hero shouted and said what he had to do to use magic. Grandfather understood what our hero wanted, but he knew almost nothing about magic, but pointing to the alley, he said that in one of the stores there are a lot of books about magic. Grandpa asked him if he wanted to go because there are a lot of books to look at. Our hero did not even ask permission and ran to the store. He said that he would not be there long, so he would be back soon. Grandfather had taken the book of our hero in his hands and was about to open it. He liked to read them, so he remembered very much. He opened the book, but he saw only some scribbles there. He immediately took the words of our hero seriously because he had just mentioned that he has to learn to use magic. Our hero had already thought that he would be able to touch books with his hands because he was in a store, but the saleswoman told him not to do it. He asked if he could at least have a look at them, but the woman cried out because such books were not for the common people, and he did not think that they were the same as the practical books sold in the haberdashery. She asked our hero what he would do if he would leave his handprints on the book. Would he really buy it? Our hero began to be very nervous. He did not think that such books were very expensive. He asked himself, where did his father get such books? At that moment a strange man in a hat came into the store. He asked if all the books he had ordered had arrived. The saleswoman asked him if it was the chief butler. She knew it was him, so he asked how he could get them. And our hero was trying to leaf through what he had in his hands as quickly as possible. But ironically, he could not find anything either. Our hero had already left the store and could not understand whether it was possible to find a book to read at all. Our hero was in the street, so he noticed that a man was carrying books. He asked himself where the man was carrying them. But while our hero was running after this aristocrat, he noticed that he had just thrown them in the trash. There were a lot of books, so our hero understood where his father got all those books from in their house. He was very upset. He looked at the people behind him. He knew it was to know, but how was it any different from them? Our hero remembered what his father had said, that he should not go out with them, but why did he say that? Our hero was following the women, but a man took him by the shoulders and told him that this was not the place where he could go alone. He said that behind this gate was the territory of aristocrats. He asked where our hero's parents were. Our hero hesitated, but he said that they were not far away. Just then other people began to come and asked if it was not strange that our hero had gone there at all, and everybody thought that he was not from around here. They even made a hypothesis that our hero was an orphan raised by bandits. They wanted to take him with them, to take him somewhere, but our hero had already vanished. Just then, these watchers began to shout and ask to find our hero, and they thought that it was very bad. Our hero had hidden in a flower bed. He always checked if the watchers had gone. He was very frightened. He even noticed that his boot had gone very far away. But while he was bending down to get the boot, he heard a conversation about magic. Our hero was very interested because it was very important for our hero. He heard someone talking to the principal. He had looked at the walls and realized that this was most likely the school of magic. He had heard that pupils were trying to name the most powerful thing in magic. Knowledge had been named, and also efforts had been made, but nothing had been counted. Our hero also wondered what could it be if it was not knowledge or effort. Is it really necessary to become an aristocrat? But then the teacher said that the most important thing in learning magic is discernment. Everyone wondered what insight was, but the teacher said that it is a strange feeling when one knows something but does not know how to explain it. That is clairvoyance. Many scientists have proved this. But don't people understand that 1 + 1 = 2, even without a complex proof? Because it is a rule that has existed in the world for a very long time, they not only memorize it, but they feel it and fully accept the concept. Magic as well as this thing has existed in the world since its beginning, so that is why they can experience it fully with insight. So their teacher said exactly what our hero had been stuck in his mind for a very long time. He said that clairvoyance is more accurate than knowledge and faster than effort. Our hero, hearing this, thought that this was incredibly genius. Our teacher had also thought, in fact he had even thought that if they would improve their skills, they could become wizards as well. Our hero, when he heard the words to become a magician, thought, will he get such a chance? But at that moment the teacher talked to our hero, because he wanted to know what the child standing behind the wall was thinking. Our hero was very afraid and surprised. He thought, what should he do? Should he run away or respond? After all, now he is really in a slovenly state, and no one knows what can happen. But the thought of our hero that if he will not get through this wall now, it seems for sure he will regret his whole life. He began to climb the wall and could see an incredibly beautiful area with children sitting near the tree and the teacher. The old man asked if our hero had come to be his companion. The headmaster of the School of Magic Alpheus appeared in front of us, Merchai Alpheus, who was a state mage of the 4th rank. Our hero liked it for sure, so he climbed over the fence completely. He timidly began to approach everyone, because he did not expect what to expect from them. The children began to shout that our hero was a commoner, but not an aristocrat. They shouted that he should not come near, and he was forbidden to enter their territory at all. But only the old man said that our hero should approach, so he even asked what made our hero to show such a big interest. Our hero was a little bit hesitant, but still he said that he would like to see some magic. The old man was surprised, because how is it really that he had not seen magic in his life? But our hero stood there very shy. In fact, he had only read about it in a book. Children began to shout that our hero could read books as a commoner. Our hero bowed and said that it did not matter what magic, but to show something. But the old man said that there is nothing difficult, so he will show wind magic. All pupils began to look at the simple man, who is our hero, and at the old man who had already lifted his hands up. Our hero was thinking how the wind could be magic. But at that very moment all pupils rose up into the air. Everybody was having a very good time, only our hero was afraid that he was going to fall down. He cried out in fear and closed his eyes. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that he was surrounded by pupils already standing on the ground. They were having fun looking at our hero. Old man asked with a kind smile on his face how our hero liked magic. Did he like it? Our hero understood that it means to use magic. The old man even decided to explain what it was. He wanted to compare magic to something, but our hero started to shout and demand the principal to tell the truth. All pupils were shocked that our hero had treated the principal like this and even shouted at him, as even teachers cannot talk to him like this. But the headmaster looked at our hero and decided to smile smilingly and said that he would explain everything in a different way so it would be more difficult for our hero to understand. He said that magic is the same action of leaving the common sense of everything. So to put it in reverse, it is the effect on the consciousness, exploring the truth of the phenomena. The old man was about to say that everything was much easier, but our hero said something that others could not have expected. He said that in this case magic is not a well-known phenomenon, but maybe that's why it is close to the truth. The old man was delighted, so he asked if it was also written in books. Our hero answered that it is not written in the books, but he could only underline the general features. Though at the beginning many ideas of great men were criticized and appeared as mad, but finally they were recognized as sane. Our hero had even thought that maybe the truth was hidden somewhere, but certainly not in their common sense. The old man was pleased with the answer, even too much, so our hero asked him what he would need to learn to use magic. The old man realized that he was facing a very clever child. He even realized that our hero wanted to get the exact information and explore it, even if it would be very difficult. Does our hero really think he can do it? As sad as it is, the old man knows that our hero is not even an aristocrat, so he said that instead of a detailed explanation he would show a practical example. He asked one of his pupils to enter the spirit zone. Our hero was very curious, what is this spirit zone anyway? At that very moment the girl named Schumann said she had entered the zone, so the teacher asked her to see how many coins he had in his hand. Just how many coins were in his hand, our hero just could not believe how it was possible. So the old man decided to explain that if the magician concentrates, then his mind becomes so sensitive that he can feel everything around him. Outstanding magicians can even guess how many leaves are on trees far away. Spirit zone, this is the highly sensitive state of mind. The wizards who have entered it observe the outside world outside of sensory perception, and as a result they can control phenomena. Our hero understood everything, because that girl had not even counted the number of coins, she just felt the situation going on in front of her eyes. Our hero had already wanted to think that he could do it too, so the old man even said that anyone can do it. He asked our hero to practice in a quiet place, but first he would have to feel himself and then just to feel himself. But the old man thought that anyone can do it, but not just anyone. The old man even said that if he succeeds, then a different world will be opened before him. Our hero immediately said that it is clear, if no one can do it, then he will not be able to win. The old man liked our hero more and more, so he was very interested if he could do it. He understood that if our hero cannot enter the spirit zone, then he will definitely be unable to learn magic. Our hero stood in a quiet pose and began to feel everything around him, but he began to wonder, what is me? Is it not a brain? But it is definitely not, it is only an organ of the physical body, and feelings and reality that he feels, which simply cannot go beyond the concept of the brain. Our hero understood that he was not giving a definition, but he felt that he was removing little by little what he felt under the concept of himself. He did not feel what is called him becoming sensitive, but what remains is only a sensitive spirit. Our hero saw something, and then he saw the old man, who asked him what he felt. Our hero said that he heard a sound. All boys and girls began to laugh, because everyone can hear the sound if he just closes his eyes. The old man had already resigned himself to the fact that nothing would work, because what happens in the spirit zone has a different dimension of synesthesia. From the sound comes the smell, from the light comes the taste, and the scenery touches the skin. It was these comparisons that could be given to synesthesia. Old man came to our hero and started to stroke his head, telling him that if he would train hard in the future, he would be able to hear more sounds. The old man has left our hero together with his group because they had to return to school. However, he still felt pity for our hero because he really had a talent for witchcraft. If he was an aristocrat and had been trained at this school since he was young, most likely he could even reach a higher level than all the children who were with him. But he understood that there were many talented children in the world without him. He said he really made it. Our hero heard a sound, which was incredibly loud, but what he listened to was really called a spirit zone. Our hero felt at that moment as if he was divided into small pieces and scattered far away, all over the world. Our hero understood that at that moment he was all this world. Our hero cried at this, he trembled at the greatness of this infinity, but even though it was only one moment he was able to leave the mainland and become infinite. While he was running down the street and thinking about all this, he bumped into some strange and angry people. They didn't like it much that our hero had bumped into one of them. They took him by the scruff of the neck and wanted to beat him because the answer to a punch. But at that moment, behind all the people who asked what they were doing, but when they turned around they saw a girl whose name was Mrs. Amy. Our hero was looking at her and wondering if she was an aristocrat. But they began to justify themselves by saying that our hero wanted to kill them, so they wanted to take care of him. Our hero shouted that he had just bumped into him. But of course they started to hit him back. Our hero was lying on the floor and coughing, while the men were saying that our hero would have to pay him back. They even told our hero to bring his mother to answer for him. Our hero did not answer, but they started beating him again with their feet and laughing. At that moment, Izum asked everyone to stop and came up to our hero, asking if he was okay. Our hero was lying there saying that he hadn't done anything, but the girl Amy said that it's time to quit fooling around because our hero can be shaken up and then sold to the South Village. And because he's a commoner, there wouldn't be any consequences. Our hero was very afraid and called his father, but after looking at Amy, who also dreamed of a slave, she was just beside herself with joy. Immediately the men threw themselves on him, saying that his mistress wanted to see him naked. They began to get to him, but at that moment, Amy began to think about the state of our hero, because she just wanted to torture him to the extent and then let him go had our hero gone crazy. And our hero, at this time our hero was in the spirit zone, but he did not realize it himself. He saw that very tree in front of him, near which our teacher had shown him the magic of wind. He understood that now he was seeing the same skill of the wind in his own memories. Bandits were shaking him, but only Amy noticed something wrong. She asked everybody to leave, but our hero could use wind magic without even knowing it. He looked up where his offenders were flying, but in a moment they were already lying on the floor with smashed legs and arms. Amy started to run at our hero and ask him who he was and how did he learn magic in the first place. Many people started running to the place where there was a surge of mana, so Amy immediately left the scene. Our hero turned around and saw the result of his magic. He understood that if people come here, they will certainly not listen to our hero or exactly what he has to say. Our hero ran as fast as he could and called his father, but deep in his heart he realized that this world is very cold. Here we see the first-ranked nobles, the Karmi's family, and the same Amy, who had told her father that they had been beaten by a boy, had arrived. But he only said she was wounded and that his daughter had most likely skipped her lessons. But she said that all that she had to learn, she had learned, so she was not even having fun. Her father asked her when she will grow up, because even if she is a genius, she will be very carefree. Amy went upstairs very menacingly, but her father's words that one day she will be stabbed in the back made her very sad and thoughtful. She looked at her father at one point and asked if he had any acquaintance at the School of Magic, because if so, she asked him to introduce her to him. But winter had already come, so we saw our hero's house again. His father called him and asked where he was, but his mother said that their son had gone to the woods to cut down trees. He wondered what he was doing there because it had not even stopped snowing. He even went into the woods to look for him. His father, while walking in the snowy woods, thought about that spring when he took his son Cheyenne to the woods for the first time. He almost lost him because he said that he was shocked, but it was clear that something was wrong. Our hero stood in front of the tree with his axe in his hands. One could think that he was chopping a tree, but he was thinking about the same magic that he had activated on that fateful day. Our hero simply could not use it afterwards, for it is the magic in which he excelled, being unconscious. He cannot use his clairvoyance to know what happened in the past, all because he has no knowledge of magic, but he can still enter the spirit zone. Being in this state, our hero could feel absolutely everything that was around him, touch, forms, smells. He could know everything at once about every tree he looked at. He saw a strange glow, but could not understand what it was. Yet he just took it and struck that strange glow. He just felt it. But when he hit that spot, he realized that he could cut down a tree with one blow. Our hero realized that that was magic. But his father, who was standing behind another tree, could not understand what had happened, and what did he see? In fact, what he just saw was nothing but a thunderstorm. Our hero was thinking that he had brought him down in one of 100 blows with the axe, just like with the magic that day. Our hero understood that it was not luck that was needed there, but the exact knowledge of the South, so that tomorrow and again tomorrow he would repeat everything without stopping. It would all be for chance, which would one day have to come to him. 3 years later, in the fall, our hero had grown up. Our hero understood that you can't and shouldn't see with your eyes, you have to feel with them. Our hero could cut down trees with one blow at the first time. Our hero almost did not go home after meditation, even though about 5 hours had already passed. All sensations told our hero that he had become a nature. He could feel vibrations of grove, movement of worms, sounds of tree roots absorbing moisture. He could listen to all this very deeply. However, he missed 5 hours. Our hero remembered the old man's words that if he could do it, he could see another world for sure. Our hero decided to go home on that beautiful note. In front of his house he found a map and white horses. He wondered if the guests had arrived. When he went home, he saw his parents, who wanted to introduce him to the butler and chief of the Ojent family. He introduced himself as Timurin. Our hero could not understand what an aristocrat of the second level needed. Immediately Timurin began to inspect our hero and asked different questions, such as whether he can read, how old is he. But after examining him, Timurin concluded that our hero was a very good example, because he could read, although this was not necessary for the woodcutter's son, and he was very respectful. So she asked us if our hero would like to work in his family. Our hero wanted to object, but Timurin immediately said that they needed a man in the library, one of the duties of which would be to prevent removal of books. This work will go on for 2 years, and the hard work will be done by porters, and our hero and the butler will sort them. Our hero is very hooked by the fact that he will be working in the library, because he believes that in the library the family will accumulate a lot of high-level knowledge necessary for a magician, but the fact that this work will know only the family of our hero and himself. And books should not be taken out for any reason, and no one should know that they were taken out. If it happens, then he and his family will die. Our hero understood that most likely his parents had such expressions because this work was putting their lives on the line, even though the pay would be good. Temuarn even dared to say that such a sum would be very hard to earn, even if someone tried to hunt to the breaking of the bones. So he advised our hero's father to send his son to a better place. But our hero's father said that he listened to Timurin only because he wants our hero to have all his dreams come true. But Timurin laughed at that. Doesn't our hero's father think that our hero will succeed in something? Most likely he gives him to earn money and nothing else. His father objected. It was clear to Timurin that our hero could read, but nevertheless the butler made it clear that he did not believe in our hero's ability to understand everything perfectly. But if he wanted to fulfill his son's dreams, then why did he lie to him all the time? We see the memories of our hero's father, who recalled the moment when his wife taught our hero a few words just for fun. He remembered that our hero had learned to read at the age of 6, and he had the appearance of an aristocrat. But the most distinctive thing in his life was his clever head. Did the blood of an aristocrat flow in our hero? All this time our hero's father had a dream that if he grew up in an aristocratic family, he would have succeeded in life. But the thought that their family is only poor and the father is an ordinary lumberjack, then the son will have to work with him in the mountains. However, as soon as our hero started to do everything that his father does, he got scared, because in the end he was able to raise him as a child of a lumberjack. We see that at one moment our hero's father fell at the feet of the butler and asked him to hire his son because he could read and was very smart. Vincent immediately said that he had not asked for a single coin, and asked to get out of his house because he didn't even know what would happen. Timurin adjusted his hat and said that since no one knew his place, there was nothing to be done. But at one moment our hero raised his voice and said that he would do it. Timurin was shocked by this answer, even though Shiren's father was against it. He asked our hero if he meant what he said. He wasn't lying. He even repeated that if even one rumor started to circulate, then the head would be lifted from his and his relatives' shoulders. But our hero said that it is all right, because he wants to do it himself. And he knows that nothing will ever get out, and if he does, he won't blame anyone else. Timurin smiled very much, because he surely did not expect such a thing from our hero, from the commoner, so he said that he would come for him in exactly 1 week, and even if he would change his mind, there would be a chance to refuse. But after his arrival to the estate, our hero would know that he would not be able to leave the estate till he would finish his work. Vincent yelled and asked our hero why he agreed to do this job. He had thought that the aristocrats only wanted someone who would die for others. He began to apologize because everything had happened because of him, so he would take responsibility and refuse. But our hero started to cry and to smile because his father had given him such a big and very dear present. He went into embrace with his father, who was also in tears, but not from joy, but from horror. But his father soon said that he would take care of their mother because that was his task as head of the family. He asked his son to come back as soon as possible, for they still needed him. Vincent was at this time wondering if he had finally done anything worthwhile as a father. Everyone was very happy. A week later a carriage came to pick up our hero, and at the same time his father was signing a contract, apparently to put our hero in foster care. As soon as he signed it, they snatched it out of his hands and led our hero to the carriage. They were in a big hurry. The carriage closed and the coachman decided to have a chat, and our hero, with his incredible sense of environment, could see his parents very sad and crying. He stretched out his hand to them, but he understood that he should not hesitate now, because it was his only chance in his life and a double-edged sword. He did not understand if he could hold out for 2 years among the people who had great power. When you come to the kingdom of Tormia, you see that the Ojent family is the main family of Kriya's, the kingdom of Tormia. It's a family of warriors who have produced state swordsmen since antiquity. The former head of the family is a general and a third-rate state swordsman, and the current head of the family, Mr. Ojent Bishop, is a fourth-rate state knight. In a word, they can be described as very influential people, holding in their hands the power over the entire city. Passing by the kingdoms, the coachman even asked our hero to pay attention to the landmark Messet Ojent, the Great Straight Road. As soon as our hero got out of the carriage, he was asked if he was afraid, because many people say that the family is more like monsters. While our hero was asked to walk simply along the path, it seemed to him more and more that now he little by little believes in the reality of what is happening, because all that was in front of them was a family of aristocrats of the second rank. This was the Ojent family. Here were both the work and the rooms for the ordinary life of the butlers, and also the place in which our hero would live. When our hero met with the butler that we already know, he wanted to show our hero what's what. As soon as our hero had been brought to the library, our hero just could not take his eyes away from the library. The butler explained to him that all books being there will be moved to the sacred library, and our hero will have to take care of sorting of literature. Every week our hero would receive a list, so it would be his job to find those books and collect them in one place. Our hero will work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., but he will not be able to leave the estate even after that time, so he cannot leave the estate without a special order. He gave a form to our hero and said that the editor will tell him about the rules of butlers, but did our hero have any questions? Our hero, after listening to everything that Timirin told him, understood that everything he had got now was worth betting his life on. So the only question our hero had was when can he start working? But we all think that the answer was obvious, that he would be working the next day. Our hero had already put on a butler costume and he knew that books had to be sorted by author. The sorting criteria will also have to be the same. For example, if we sort books by the history of the art of wielding the sword, each person will have his or her own way of thinking. Then each person in his own way defines whether to sort this book to professional swordsmanship or to ordinary sorting. Also, in the process of determining the sorting system, our hero learned that all knowledge is connected to each other, and the linking important part is history. It is on its line that knowledge is accumulated, so it is history that is the eternity of knowledge. If, after the perfect study of history, we can add it to other areas, then the rate of learning will definitely increase. Because of 10,000 books, about 850 of them are about history. Our hero should read them all in 2 years, just to fulfill his dream and become a magician. At one moment our hero came to his senses and noticed that it seemed the deputy chief butler would be coming. He even thought that he could not allow him to see what our hero had been reading, as it had not been said officially. In his turn, Timirin said that our hero is a good sort, and is our hero working late again? Our hero was serious, so he stood up immediately and said that it was true. But he did not praise our hero. He told him that he must not allow his condition to worsen, as all responsibility lies on him. But at one moment our hero noticed that Timirin approached him, so he wondered if he overshadowed the one that our hero read. However, the only thing the butler did was to shake the dust off our hero's clothes and said that this library also includes the family, so our hero should watch his condition. He was also told that it might lower the nobility of the Ojent family. He was also asked to do something about his long hair. Our hero trembled the whole time, but he did not give anything away. Our hero understood what they wanted him to do, so he concluded that he would still have to take great care of himself for 2 years. He should also be more careful, because there should be much less claims to him. Our hero even thought that he should tie them up like his father does, but still there was a bigger problem. Our hero did not understand anything in the book, in which it is written about 3 empires and 7 kingdoms. He had read that even just one kingdom of Tormia was not easy, so how was he supposed to understand so much? Did he have to memorize everything at all? But he understood that he should not do that. The only thing he should do was to understand every line, because only then he could use this knowledge at any time. Our hero fell asleep reading the books at this rate, but when Timirin approached him he saw a certain mess. He also noticed the book which our hero could not understand for half a month. He smiled a little and asked the sleeping hero if he thought that he could succeed with his studies. But if our hero had really mastered those books, he would have forbidden him to enter them sitting outside his working hours, but now he is calm. After all, our hero seems to him an ordinary fool with huge dreams. But for our hero the work in the big library of Hojent went on, and then 3 months passed imperceptibly. Our hero kept working, and his sorting began to bring great pleasure, and it just became easier. He learned a lot about butler work, and also continued to hand out books on record. He even began to talk to the other butlers, even those who did not return the books. He understood that even if only the butlers, or the servants, were shaken off and bled for the books that were not returned. But the most shocking thing was that the aristocrats did not care much about everything in the library, but everything in the library was not so important. But our hero understood that even so everything is not in full order, because the absence of excitement among the aristocrats is possible only with the support and sincerity of the commoners. Those very commoners, who put their lives on the line for what the aristocrats do not even remember. So our hero must necessarily become incredibly cold, so as not to make even a fraction of a mistake. He understood that life as if he were absent would be much better for him, but at that very moment some black-haired boy burst into the library, shouting that he would not die if he rested today. Our hero knew by the blue hair that it was the youngest son of the head of the Ojin clan. Judging by the shouts that he had dared to escape from the training, one could think that it was very bad. He ran up to our hero and told him to lie about seeing him around. An old man with a long beard had also run into the library and was shouting at his student. He asked our hero if a boy with blue hair and the size of a peanut had come running here. Our hero was shocked by the fact that he was the size of a peanut, but he pretended to have no idea where the youngest son was. He asked who the old man was, but the old man answered at once in a hoarse voice that he was a sword master, a master who could split that very peanut with his strike. And also our hero shouldn't joke, and it would be better to tell him right away where the youngest son was. Our hero immediately said that the youngest son was under the bookcase, which made the boy very angry. But the master immediately grabbed his shirt and threw him out the door. He really didn't like the fact that this little jerk could give a damn about their training, but still the trainer should put his mind in order better and teach him a lesson. He dragged him by the legs, but our hero understood that the master had the power of the head of the family, so he did not even have any choice. If we believe the rumor, when the master caught him, no one saw him again for a month. But for our hero, the first time it took our hero 20 days to read one book. But after he had perfectly understood all the books, then in 4 months he was able to read 82 books of history. Exactly as he expected, he thought that the difficulties arise only from the beginning, because in no book is nothing about what our hero would not know. If you create a base, then from about 200 books, the remaining 650 will not have almost any meaning. During the reading of history books, in the head of our hero began to rush doubts, is mastering history the right choice? However, when he studied the actions of magicians within history, he became more and more sure of the correctness of his choice. If the scientist studies theories, then the magician is the person who materializes this theory in a reality. That is, magicians and scientists are equal. However, even at such an outcome, the reason why not all scientists are magicians is that they cannot enter a zone of spirits. In other words, if we add knowledge to our hero's spirit area, then this will be the beginning. Our hero had been pleased, because apparently he really can become a magician. But the gates of the library opened, and black-haired youngest son entered there, who was very angry at our hero. He said that he could stay in that very hell only because he wanted to kill our hero. Our hero could not accept the fact that he was very stubborn, but still he asked if it was true that he had come because of what had happened. But the blue-haired man did not keep waiting for an answer and immediately said that that was why he had come. Does our hero know how much he had suffered? He went up and down the cliff more than once, and when he had no strength left in his hands and thought that he would die, he was saved by the fact that he wanted revenge on our hero. Our hero understood that the younger son's anger had really reached the limit, so it was already frightening. The younger son asked our hero if our hero really thought he was acting this way just because he had suffered a little. But he is mad because he asked our hero for a favor and he trusted him, but he blurted it out. It was the first time he had seen such cowards like our hero. Our hero, while he was pressed, thought that people having powers, Monsoon, adjusted the login to be comfortable for them, but the only thing our hero said was to ask what he could do instead of it. But he only smiled and said that that would not be enough as an apology, so he simply asked him to follow him. They came to the parade ground, where they practiced with the sword. The younger son said that he would show him how to do it. Our hero was only thinking about how hard he would beat him. Our hero understood that even if he beats him, he will bear it, because it will be better than just dying. He could not spoil the chance given to him by his parents, for he had put his life on the line for him. Our hero had been thrown a sword, and his younger son told him that it was a duel, and now he would show how badly he had been treated. Our hero did not understand why he was called a coward all the time, but the younger son was angry, because it was our hero who allowed him to be beaten by the master. He was able to turn his back on a man in distress. Our hero noticed that his look had changed, and he went on to say that no matter how his family ignored him, he was not one to be put in anything, even a man like our hero, so he asked to attack and he would consider the difference in strength and would start after 3 blows received. Our hero understood that he is a man of the Ojnath clan, but he also understood that the wooden sword they have in their hands is strong, so if he breaks his bones, then our hero will have to go home. How will our hero survive? Our hero, however, realized that he would have to use all of the skills that he had learned, and he has 3 tries. The first blow of our hero did not pass. He was able to parry the attack. Our hero couldn't understand where did it come from. The second blow didn't go through either, so Junior asked if our hero was holding a sword at all. Our hero didn't care, because he was only counting how many blows he had left, but 1. Our hero entered the zone of spirits and began to see through his enemy. The junior could not understand what was wrong with our hero. He was about to attack, but his sword just broke. He could not believe his eyes. Our hero looked at all this and understood that he was able to do it. And our hero had calculated everything, because he could feel everything with the first attack. With the second attack he calculated the time of his opponent, and with the third one he did what was necessary. That thunderous blow, which he had practiced countless times during 3 years, paid off. The younger son was looking at our hero and could not understand where the hell he learned how to do this. Our hero explained that it was not art, but a thunderbolt. He explained that his father worked in the mountains, and he followed him and simply cut down trees, but that his physical strength was not enough to cut, so he learned this technique to make up for his weaknesses. Among lumberjacks this is called a thunderbolt. But my youngest son did not understand how he could just cut down trees and learn it himself. After all, holding a sword for 15 years, such a technique is simply impossible to obtain simply by cutting down trees. My youngest son's memories came back to us. He remembered that once upon a time someone else had also been able to do it when he was 12 years old. They were able to explore the ability of their family. They even realized at that moment that the ability of the second master was too great for his peers. So the son named Rai adopted all the genius of his father, and everyone decided to celebrate it. But Rai all the time just could not catch up with his brother, which really pissed him off. He was looking at our hero and saw his brother in him. He began to behave aggressively, and our hero did not understand what he had done. Was he tactless? But the younger son asked him to shut up and took his iron sword from its sheath and threw it to our hero. He said that as their weapons were out of order, the victory was not yet decided, and if he learned how to destroy the sword, the younger son should deal with our hero according to his level. He told our hero that they will decide the winner in a month, only with real swords. Our hero was holding a sword in his hands and his hands were shaking, because he could really die. He begged the junior master to think again, because our hero had not learned anything, but he was adamant, because that is why he gave him 1 month. He said that if he was so good as to have mastered the technique, he would think of something. He even said that our hero must not run away, because he must be able to do better than our hero. Our hero was sitting in front of his books again, but he was very depressed because he had found out that children of the Ogenitive family have distinctive features both in black and in blue hair. The head of the family has black hair, the eldest son has black hair, he is the state swordsman of the 6th rank, the eldest daughter, the blue hair is also very capable, but chose not a sword, but music, she is now a pianist in the kingdom. The second son Rai with black hair is called the undisputed genius. So unlike the top-ranked black-haired brothers, Ryan was not too capable, even though he had a personal mentor. Everybody knows about it, so our hero was very upset because he understood that he had to put up with all the beatings, and now he had just done that. He had scratched the pride of a man who had lived his whole life being compared to his brothers, and he thought that they were all incredible. He thought that if the problem didn't involve books, he wouldn't have to die. Our hero wanted to be sad, but he needed to think of something, because he should think about becoming a mage. He had lived in the mountains, so he was confident in his endurance, and if he had learned at least a way of protection, he would probably be able to survive. So it was at this point our hero realized that he needed to do all that he could do. At the same time Ryan was training and he had already run the 100th lap. The coach was pleased because the record time had been reduced. He even asked if something had happened to make him train so obediently. However, at that moment Ryan asked what it was it training? But he was still standing on his 2 legs, so he asked for something more powerful. The old man thought about it, he knew that something had happened. But from the old man's eyes he thought that it was because of his elder brother Rai. But it could not be, so the only decision of the old man was to tell Rai that if he dies it will not be his fault. What we have before us is the scheme. It was the thing that Rai had long studied. It gave the notion that magicians have a spirit zone. It was a scheme that only swordsmen have. Any person has an idea of his physical body, but the scheme can be called an embodiment of its extremity. It is said that due to that, masters of schemes can ideally borrow all the cells of their body. Our hero, after reading this, thought, isn't it the exact opposite of the spirit zone? But should he try it? At first he decided to feel himself, but he decided that it would be ineffective to practice the technique, scheme which is the exact opposite of the spirit zone. He even thought that the girl that he had met last time, to be exact 3 years ago, also used the scheme, but such a level at such a young age seems to him very surprising. But even so our hero thought that he should practice a few sword techniques based on the spirit zone. First of all he starts with cutting in 8 directions. But we see Ryan's training. He is very angry because he does not have a scheme and his teacher looks at all this with horror. He is worried about his student. He stopped his student's sword and said that that's enough training for today and then asked what he was thinking about. But he decided to have a little laugh and said that he felt that he would die in his hands. Ryan was asked if he knew that, but he only said that he didn't know what he was good at, but he knew what he was bad at. The teacher said that that is why he is not a genius. Ryan was very offended and said that he knew this, so he asked him to stop. But the teacher said with a smile on his face that geniuses know what they are geniuses and what they are good at, but in consequence the efforts of a genius are the actions without any doubt with which they accomplish what they are good at. And what the ones like them are really afraid of is the effort to master what they cannot master themselves. It is even like a flame of striving to give up what they cannot do. That's what you might call the natural enemy of genius. Ryan smiled, because he found it strange to hear such things. He even said that he liked this consolation better than anything he had heard before. But still he was not discouraged, for if it was an ability that he could not get at first, he could just get it by persistence. He would win for sure. So exactly what is called the art of the sword is a set of dynamic sports that sets the goal of getting rid of a living being. However, on the flip side it is more filled with the psychology of chopping up a living being. Our hero's only thing to do is to provide an imaginary opponent, though it seems that the enemy will attack him in many different ways, but in fact the attacks come mainly from 8 directions. Consequently, the young hero only needed to cut and block in these 8 directions. That's what he has been perfecting during this month. Our hero repeated them day after day. When he finished the first hold, he immediately began the second one, attacking step by step. Our hero repeated movement after movement, but at one moment he let go of his sword and realized that this is the way chosen by swordsmen. They chose to repeat the same action. And in principle the world of the sword is as boundless as magic. But thinking about the consequences, our hero asked to excuse him, because most likely he would not be able to return home alive. But we can notice that he certainly didn't regret anything, because even though he was at the crossroads of life and death, but his eyes had seen such an incredible world. Before us appeared the Colosseum, which was illuminated by a small amount of light. Ryan was already standing and was ready to begin, but he still asked our hero if he was ready. But what Ryan did not like was that his enemy, or more precisely our hero, could achieve such great results in only 1 month. His aura had changed beyond recognition, so Ryan had to accept that he couldn't hold a sword the last time they met. And on top of that, he was so calm, although he took a real sword in his hands, getting ready to fight to the death. Ryan began to get even more wound up and wondered if our hero had the same talent as his brother, a genius. However, as soon as he thought about it, he decided to start his attack, because there was no such a variant where he would lose. Our hero watched Ryan attacking him and understood that his level differed from his. There was not the slightest doubt. But even despite this, our hero could feel something that ordinary people could not do. He could see the very way of the sword. Ryan couldn't believe that his enemy could see his sword. And is our hero not afraid of it? But our hero kept repeating that even though he can't conquer the fear of death, the essence of fear is his death in the future, and the future is just an illusion that doesn't exist yet. So if he does not imagine the next moment at all, then any man can jump from a cliff. It was not just a willingness to die, but the anger that our hero could just control all his emotions, which were bubbling inside him at that moment. Ryan's eyes began to glow, because he was not afraid of any death either, so he rushed to fight our hero at once. Our hero foresaw this and prevented an attack from the right. Ryan thought that our hero could block his strike, but that there were walls in the world that couldn't be overcome by tricks alone, so he drew his sword and started to attack our hero even harder. Each of the attacks was extremely hard and fast for our hero, but our hero was worried, because the speed at which he can recognize the sword movements with his synesthesia simply can't be enough for him right now. Ryan at this moment wounded our hero in the chest, so that blood appeared on his clothes. In his eyes a strange glow, because he knew that the next blow would follow, so our hero tried to dodge it with a somersault, and he succeeded. Our hero could not understand what he was doing wrong, but Ryan was beginning to feel the smell of victory over his opponent, because at that moment our hero looked completely confused. He asked our hero, did he realize how weak he was? Because Ojin's sword technique was originally created for training with a big sword, so our hero simply would not be able to withstand Ryan's heavy attack. It was Ryan who put effort into his every gift that broke his bones, so that he would be able to tear our hero to pieces with this power. But it seemed to our hero that this fight was getting stranger and stranger, for he knew that if the last wounded him, he would have continued and struck again from the bottom upwards. He would have cut his side and that would have been the end of it, so why did he make such sweeping movements? But this made our hero realize that his opponent wasn't that good at everything and that he didn't understand the art of the sword as well as he would have thought he did. Ryan is used to using techniques, but he lacks the insight he needs to use them. So our hero realized that in this case he would tune into the reduction of Ryan's supposed combat power. Our hero had already run at him, but now with the understanding that he had to change his tactics, he decided to go on the attack. Ryan could not have imagined such a turn of fate, because he certainly could not have expected that our hero would crawl towards him with force. He didn't even realize that he had cornered our main character. Ryan could not understand why he was using ordinary skills, but it was so difficult to block them. Our hero could only notice that Ryan's stamina had decreased to a minimum, but he kept his rhythm so he could conserve his stamina. Ryan just got mad because how could it happen that in front of him stood a true copy of his brother, a genius. Before him were the memories of how his brother had smirked incredibly as if he had become insane. He had even made it clear with all his appearance that he should not even look at him because his powers were beyond his allowances. However, Ryan was furious because out of the blue he began to shout that his goal is to become the best swordsman in the world. He rushed at our hero. Our hero could not understand what he was doing. Does he not think at all? But looking closer he noticed that the movements of his opponent's sword were impossible to read. He couldn't see them. They were so fast and chaotic that our hero could not take anything against such tactics. He even understood that there were unbelievably many options in front of him now. Our hero had already received the last blow, which he had only noticed at the very last moment. At that very moment there was such a blow that our hero's sword simply fell out of his hands. But actually it was not the sword of our hero, but the sword of Rihanna, who could not believe what had happened at all. He realized that at that very last moment our hero was able to change his grip and beat back the blow. Ryan could not believe his eyes and thoughts. He had only one question in his head: so what is our hero? But our hero could not believe himself, because how is it that he was still able to win this hard battle? But what will happen next? Because even though this is a duel, an aristocrat is standing in front of him, and since our hero had once again struck his pride, it was impossible to imagine what would happen. Our hero stood with his sword drawn at Ryan, and he began to beat his head and say that he had lost again. But our hero is victorious, so that Ryan will be grateful if our hero kills him, and he won't say anything against him. Our hero asked him if he was joking. Ryan didn't understand and was about to say something, but our hero asked him if he thought he would live if they knew that our hero had killed one of his kind. Ryan wanted to say that they had put their lives on the line and everything, but our hero went on shouting and saying that Ryan was the one who had put his life on the line and that our hero was only trying to stay alive. Their duel between each other was absurd from the start, but somehow the blame for this lies solely with our hero from the beginning. Couldn't he see his mistake in simply not wanting to train? But Ryan asked our hero if he was the one who betrayed him, even though he should have been respectful. And our hero had an iron argument. He said that he should have shown respect for his ass too, had he thought about the situation that he had been put in. He was stuck between his youngest son and his fencing instructor at that moment. So if Ryan would have been a decent man who was honored, he would never have put his butler in this position. Our hero even finished him off by saying, had the thought never occurred to such a man who deserves recognition, that he just proudly met his teacher face to face. In fact, Ryan had just realized what it looked like from the outside. He had realized that he was really a complete bastard. But our hero had fallen on the ground, almost dead, because he was terribly tired. Ryan looked at all this and did not understand his state, because shouldn't the people who had just fought after the duel say warm compliments? And also looking at our hero, he wondered where was the cold-blooded warrior with whom he had just fought. He saw before him only a frail boy who could hardly walk at all, but he was sure that a genius was sitting before him, but he did not even laugh at him, as his brother had done before and to this day. On the contrary, he faced him face to face, gathering all his strength. So at that moment Ryan broke the silence and asked our hero what his name was. Our hero wiped some sweat from his face and said that his name was Sharon, so Ryan introduced himself at the same moment. But at the same moment Ryan held out his hand and asked him if he would like to be his friend. Then we go back to the library, where the chief butler Ungo told our hero that he'd sorted more than 7,000 books out of 10,000 possible. He even said that our hero did a great job in his first past year. Then we find out that a year has passed since our hero began working at the great library of the Ocean. As the number of books that he had to sort out had decreased, his productivity had also increased. Moreover, he had only 200 books to read from his goal of 850. But we find out that our hero can now read more than 3 books a day, so that he will soon be able to get the amount of knowledge that he has wanted for a long time. Also, he could try himself in fencing and know the essence behind the fear. Thanks to all this, he even feels that the duration of his state of mind has increased. Our hero really thinks he could have died at that moment, though at first it was difficult to him, but thinking that he should not give up, he was gradually approaching his aim. Another important thing was that Ryan was now his friend and was hanging out in the library with him. He was looking at a lot of books and couldn't believe that his family had such books. Did his whole family really read every one of them? It was this treasure, and for our hero, even he understood that there is nothing more important than a good friend. Our hero, on the other hand, while he was working, told Ryan Yu that of course it was so, because the gal and the other young master often visit the library. Ryan Yu thought that it was cool to be clever, but our hero thought that after he could get close to Ryan Yu, he realized that in spite of his enormous height he was very gentle and sweet. But he even thinks that's to be expected from the younger one. Our hero had become more and more aware that he really was acting like the younger son. But while Ryan was throwing books, our hero had become very serious and frightened, for if even one book was damaged he would surely die. But Ryan calmed our hero. He couldn't understand how a book could be more important than a human life. And even if our hero burns the library, Ryan can protect him, so he asks not to worry about our hero. Our hero was hanging on his head because he knew that he wouldn't hate it if he kept his mouth shut, but Ryan simply can't be changed. So our hero told him that he could only think about safety when Rihanna would just stand there. But our hero even decided to ask him what about his training, but Ryan just threw his hands up and said that it was basic training, so he told his teacher that he wanted to train in the library for a while. Our hero asked what he was waiting for. He had to train now. But Ryan had started shouting and begging, saying that he was just bored. Our hero had also noticed that his friend had become too lazy. He compared him to a fire, which couldn't be stopped when it started to flare up, so that as long as there was a chance, he would talk again and again. However, 10 minutes later our hero did sit down to study with Ryan. He said that if he had come to learn, he had to learn. Ryan asked our hero, obviously unhappy at being forced to read books, if his friend Shiren wanted to become a mage. Did he really need to read so many books? Our hero, however, was sure of just that, so he said that in fact he was even behind in his program, for he had never had the opportunity to study before he came here to the library. But now that he has read more than 600 books on history, he knows almost everything. Our hero amazed Rehan more and more. He couldn't even believe everything he was saying. How could our hero be able to read so quickly? Is it possible that at this rate he could get sucked into the kingdom? They were the same age, but Shiren seemed much more mature than he was. Ryan even took the book in his hand and said that he had taken enough of it, because the preface says what will happen if a magician and a warrior clash, so who will really win? It said that the man scoured the world in search of an answer to this question. But even at that moment, when the author closed his eyes, he could see the shimmering mountains of Artishan rising 6,000 meters above sea level. In those mountains there is a carnivorous tree that devours birds. At this point, however, Ryan gave up reading, saying that it was all very delicious. But our hero started to shout, because why did he stop? He started to get to Ryan to look at the book, but Ryan started to shout that this book didn't even have any pictures about swordsmanship. Our hero, on the other hand, stuck to his guns, saying that he could not say so without reading a page, so he began to try even harder to read. Who would win, a warrior or a magician? But Ryan didn't care, because no one in his right mind, in his opinion, would have staged such a fight. However, when Ryan's brother entered their hall, he said that it was already obvious that the swordsman would win. Our hero immediately began to bow, welcoming the young master, but Ryan was not very happy about it all. He asked how his brother knew about this. Our hero could not imagine if his brother had heard about their conversation. They were all on guard, for if a servant could talk to the child of a nobleman so freely, it would not be without a beating. Ryan went back to his own words and asked his brother why was he so sure of what he had said. Is it possible that his brother is a swordsman just because he is one too? Ryan said that the word sure is too strong a word, because you can tell this simply by looking at the situation of archers and mages on the continent. But Ryan kept on insisting, and in principle it was his nature. He asked, what kind of situation is it if we are talking about a simple fight? Does his brother mean that they choose their opponents on the battlefield based on their military rank? But Ryan didn't pay attention to his good-for-nothing brother. He asked our hero what he thought. Our hero was at once taken aback, because he could not expect that he would be addressed. Our hero did not even understand what he wanted, because even at ordinary times it is probably difficult to understand him, but because of many thoughts in his head it has become even more difficult now. Our hero could clearly understand that he only had to give a clear answer to the question. Our hero began to say that if an archer and a magician are on the same level, he believes that the swordsman will be difficult to defeat the mana when he enters into a state of mind. However, if a swordsman uses all his strength in a battle before a magician casts a spell, then something will change. However, Rai interrupted our hero and said with a smirk on his face that he was wrong, because the swordsman would win and the magician would definitely lose. Our hero could not believe it, but Ryan understood that it was the same morning of his brother. Even since they were children, as soon as Rai met someone unpleasant, he liked to trample on what was important to him. Rai even went on to say that our hero likes history, and most likely he had even heard about that very armor of the 5 gods. Our hero was silent, but Rai wondered if it's the artifact that destroys the state of mind. Our hero understood and imagined in his head that the inborn ability of mages is a state of mind, and to fight a mage who is in such a state is like a duel with sharks in the depth of the sea. However, something can vaporize the water and deprive the sharks of any sense, anti-magic. If the state of mind is not capable of reaching these armor, neither is magic. What mage would be able to fight someone who uses such a powerful artifact? But this anti-magic is only a theory, because anti-magic is originally a costly technique created from the very mana flowing in the heart of the dragon. And also because it has a fluctuating quality, its effectiveness increases dramatically no matter how much money you will invest in it. Even Yakra, master of the oscillation equation, was only able to reveal 65% of the full potential of the armor of the 5 gods. That's why its price is simply unaffordable. After all, each element is worth an entire kingdom's annual budget. Ryan was not happy with this information, because what the hell was it, then how will the swordsman be stronger? But Ryan said that the problem was that those who had created anti-magic were mages. Ryan couldn't understand why they would even need such a thing. But Rai had made a point of showing off by saying that it was obvious that since there was a great demand for it, they could make an enormous fortune out of it. Wizards are even literally lining up to be used. That's why there is no need at all to buy such a priceless artifact. Rai made his familiar smirk and asked if everyone understood what he was talking about. Magi were in his opinion just a miserable class of people selling the weakness of their people for profit. Ryan wanted to object, but our hero simply began to shine and said that that was the essence of magicians. Ryan could not believe his ears, so he asked again what our hero had said. But our hero was not silent. She began to say that, as they had mentioned, anti-magic was created by wizards and they used it to limit magical activity in places where it is prohibited. Yes, and it was also successfully used as protective equipment in magical schools. Although it could be used against wizards, it doesn't belittle its value as a fruit of intellect voluntarily given for the benefit of the whole world. So that's why our hero thinks that based on this fact alone it's difficult to confirm that a magic is more powerful than a wizard. Rai was out of his mind, but it annoyed him that his little brother was still laughing at him. Rai immediately turned around to say that ideas and reality are very different, so it's still a fact that a magician can't win in a battle with a swordsman. He said this only because he did not want to lose, so when he left, Ryan and our hero had a good laugh. Our hero even joked that he thought that while he was talking to Ryan, he thought that he was going to die. And at that time Ryan was very close to our hero and could not be happier because Shiren had made his brother look like he had never looked before in his life. And he said that if our hero's tongue had been a blade, our hero could have become the best swordsman in the world. This whole situation was a breath of air for Rihanna. We were even able to understand that, like Ray said, ideas and reality may be different, but the exploratory mind is ruthless and experimenting even on its weaknesses. Is it possible to say that this same intelligence exists for the sake of world peace? 6 months have passed since the last event, at which point the chief butler says that they have finished much faster than expected. All the wonderful moving of the books had been done 6 months earlier, but he was most moved by the fact that the books, which had been neglected for 20 years, had now been perfectly sorted. But another butler asked if Timirin had felt sorry for letting such a good worker go. Surely they could have used some excuse to prolong his contract. But Timirin just said that a man in front of him is just talking nonsense. But, on the other hand, Timirin thought about our hero, who was sitting in the library, and thought that it is easy to close a book, but it is quite another to close a book after having read hundreds of pages. And his dream had finally come true. But he could not rejoice for long, because Ryan had run into his room, and asked our hero if he had finished his work, and if he had, would he be ready to leave. But at that moment Ryan had noticed that he had really finished his books. Our hero had even said that there was nothing left to read. It was simply unbelievable for Ryan to sit with our hero, because he thought that the person who had shocked our hero was simply not on the planet. He came up and started to embrace our hero in every possible way, but even this made him feel uncomfortable. But in spite of this all, our hero and Rihanna were very happy about everything. Our hero even offered to let him go and play together. He had been hiding his friendship for a long time, and he was very sad about it, but it was something else to hear him say it. Our hero could not believe that Ryan was so worried about it, and in fact he was very sorry too. They had met in the library most of the time and had hardly spent any time together. Our hero was incredibly curious about what his friend did with his life. But Ryan immediately said that now he could show everything, and even more, because today all his family had gone away. Our hero went outside, where a huge mansion had appeared in front of his face. He was frightened by such a big building, but our hero still could not believe whether he really could enter it, even through the main gate. But Ryan was sure that nothing would happen, because his family would only arrive in the evening. So when they went into the mansion itself, our hero noticed that it was very quiet, and also that one room in the castle was equal to his whole house. He could not believe that such a man as Ryan was from a wealthy family, but he must have been mistaken, for Ryan's room was the smallest room at the end of the corridor. It looked like a small room where you go after the training, and Ryan lived there. Our heroes were having fun for the last time. They were playing cards. Ryan didn't like that our hero was winning at cards. He even suspected that our hero was using his state of mind. But our hero said that his friend only has a habit of putting the card forward when he takes an ace, and besides it's evident how much he decides whether it's a pair or not. Ryan could not understand how our hero could see so much, but it did not take long for our hero to answer, because sometimes observation gives the best result when you are not concentrated on something particular. When you follow not the individual actions of the enemy, but for him as a whole, it is possible to anticipate his plans. Ryan's head was almost exploding from so much information, and also from the fact that he had lost once again at cards. He asked himself if it would help him to awaken his scheme. Our hero, on the other hand, supported him, because in the end that is what helped our hero to enter the state of mind. Ryan's head was boiling, because at one time he understood everything, and at another time he understood nothing at all. Our hero had noticed a book in Ryan's window, which was a novel. Our hero wanted to read it, because lately he was only reading books about simple history. But when he turned around, he saw that he had already fallen asleep at the table. Apparently he was very tired. Our hero was looking at his watch and wondered if his family would be back soon. He heard the sound of the piano, but after some thought, he remembered that there was only one person who could play that instrument, and that was the court pianist and Rihanna Ogent, Rihanna's older sister. She turned around and asked how our hero sounded at all. How did he like the piano sonata? But our hero was very nervous. He thought that they would not be able to notice him. Our hero went into the room and they asked him if he was new, but our hero decided that he should tell her that he had been sorting books in the library for a year. Judging by his sister's reaction, she knew our hero from rumors. She even knew that our hero was smart beyond his years. But did our hero play the piano even once? But our hero didn't want to let his guard down. There was a professional sitting in front of him who uses a scheme when he acts, and also Ryan says that the worst person on the estate is his sister. She invited our hero to sit down so that she could teach him the game. Our hero couldn't understand if she was really asking him to go and sit down right next to her. But his sister let him know that it was all right and that no one would scold him because she had allowed him to sit down beside her. Our hero understood that she was insistent and he was not in a position to refuse. Besides, when else would he have a chance to sit at the piano? His sister was teaching him different notes and how to work with them. She showed him how to press, in what sequence, and our hero liked to listen. He liked it very much. Our hero was praised, but at one point he asked if he could play it. She comforted him, saying that everybody had started by saying that they had failed. But when our hero touched the keyboard, she immediately realized that our hero had pressed the keyboard all wrong, but he still pressed the keyboard with confidence. She was thinking whether to stop him because he was making everything wrong, but at the same time she was thinking that his melody sounded almost the same as if he was trying to copy his whole performance. Our hero was using his zone, and sister gradually began to notice that our hero began to play correctly after each note he hit. She could not understand what was going on, because she could not call it a game, but his insight was so powerful, he immediately understood the whole point of it. She even wondered why our hero was a butler at all. After all, he was incredibly cute in the midsection. Our hero saw his sister's look and immediately stopped, because he thought that he had allowed himself too much, but at that very moment behind him there was a cry for his sister to stop playing. He was angry because he had only recently been able to sleep, and she had begun to play her instrument as soon as she arrived. But at that moment he saw his friend, Shiren. He asked what he was doing here. His sister was surprised. Do they know each other? But our hero, even though he wanted to say no, or rather not, he was very worried as their friendship may be discovered, but Ryan said that our hero is his friend. Our hero had tried to hide everything, but Ryan said that even if his sister was a naughty witch, she did not care about such things. Our hero could not understand how he could not care about this. He was just in shock. But at that very moment he saw his sister in front of him, and she said that there was nothing bad in it, because if her brother said that they are friends, then let it be so. She had said that her brother was a pitiful man, but he always takes responsibility for his words. But she asked him what our hero was thinking while he was playing the piano. Our hero could not understand anything, because the whole wall of common sense, built for 16 years, had been completely destroyed. Madame does not even care about her brother's friendship with the peasant, so that our hero even began to ask Ryan why he lied, calling his sister a nasty witch when his elder sister is a good and beautiful lady. At this very moment Ryan seemed to be covered with cold sweat. He showed with all his appearance that she is a witch who is trying to devour someone completely. However, at this very moment, the older sister said that her older brother is a bit underdeveloped, so she is even glad that he has such a friend as our hero. While his sister was chatting sweetly with our hero, Ryan asked her why she couldn't take him, because he was so cute and could be part of their family. The sister was surprised, because are they so close that her brother is ready to give her to our hero. He immediately pretended that it was not her who was the prey, but our hero, but she grabbed him by the neck and pressed him to the floor, asking if he could behave like that with the lady. Our hero, on the other hand, was confused, for as soon as he tried to understand the nobility, all his prejudices went to hell. So after Ryan had been beaten by his sister, he asked her what she was doing at home because she had just arrived. She asked him if he knew that Paradise would be getting certified today. She had come to pick him up and they were leaving tomorrow. She added that Grandpa would be arriving later to see him. At that moment Ryan slumped and began to say that it was about time to undergo some kind of certification. Though our hero had no idea about this, but he had seen how sad his friend was. But we see that the certification license is the standard and order for archers and mages, which is recognized not only in the kingdom, but also on the entire continent. Each year about 1,000 people pass the test, but about 20 pass. There are also non-certified licenses, so if someone graduated from a kingdom-approved institute, such as the Academy of Magic Alpheus, then everyone can become a non-certified mage of the 10th rank, and they can increase their rank by gaining achievement points through associations and guilds. But people usually gather where there is money and fame, so even in spite of the existence of uncertified license, there is still a constant demand for certification tests. It is surprising that Ryan's brother, Rai, would take it at such a young age, at 18. Ryan says that geniuses are different. After all, the family will fully support them. But my sister did not laugh at her brother, on the contrary, told him to be strong, and said she would go to cook something for dinner. She patted his head and said that the seafood had come from the king's palace, so she had to cook it herself, but she had not forgotten about our hero when she left. She told him that it was very nice to meet him and asked him if they would meet again. Our hero was fascinated by her. He wondered if he would meet her again. After all, the only problem will be that he will be leaving the mansion tomorrow. Our hero asked Ryan if his sister had a boyfriend. Our hero immediately said that it doesn't matter and that he is just curious anyway, so he asks his friend to forget everything. But he was already smiling broadly. He immediately flew to his sister, and our hero was lying on his knees, asking her to stop. Our hero had run after his friend. He was thinking that he had not seen his tongue because he was sad, but now he was running after his friend in the corridor. Ryan immediately ran to the stairs and shouted to the entire castle, "Does his sister have a boyfriend?" Cheyenne began to gag him, but the servants could not understand what they shouted, whether it was about a guy by any chance. But the sister asked not to be distracted by all this because they are just children and they like to fool around. She asked to cook fish and also to go to the kitchen. But a strange man was watching the show. He asked if Ryan had any meetings planned or who the young man was. He was told that nothing had been planned, so it was strange. It was the chief butler who said he remembered the boy, but it was Timiran who he asked to come into the office. We could see that Ryan was in the woods training and we decided to take the first in 10 minutes. The teacher was also thrilled, because his pupil had taken up again, but had it not been a year since then. After all, the last time he was so quickly extinguished, but the teacher could only guess that if Ryan got into the palace, then Ryan's attitude to his studies would immediately change, because the only problem was the scheme. However, when Ryan was distracted, the butler ran to him and asked him to return to the palace. Ryan asked who knew, because if it was his sister, then let her do what she wanted. But the butler said that his sister wanted him to know that his temporary butler, Cheyenne, was in danger, or rather, about to die. Ryan immediately spit out all his water and could not understand what had happened, for should not he have returned home today? But the little butler knew nothing, because all he knew was that the chief butler, Lewis, had sent a report to the head of the family, but the mistress said that it was all because of the relationship with him. Our hero went away at once and got dressed. He was about to leave for the mansion. The master asked Ryan what had happened that made him take off in such a hurry. Ryan immediately said that he had nothing to hide and that his friend, his name was Cheyenne, the butler, and that his father seemed to have found out about him. He told his master that he was sure his father would forgive him if he put in a good word for him. He said he would continue training later, but his master said he would not. Our hero was already sitting in the hall on his knees in front of the head of the family, and he was told that he would be executed. No one could understand what had happened, but Timiran felt pity for him, because he had to know about the line that must not be crossed. His sister wanted to say something, but his father did not want to hear anything, because many servants in the report of the chief butler said that this child was too careless about Ryan. So the head of the family asked our hero if he had read the contract. He should not have any objections, but is there something he would like to say? Our hero raised his head and asked, if he is a friend of the young master, what will happen to him? All the servants were looking at him and could not understand what our hero was doing. Should he not beg for mercy? And here the sister was also shocked. After all, how our hero, even in such a situation, worries about Rihanna. But the chief did not like it. He said that our hero was a fool, just like all commoners. He asked him what could happen to the nobleman who was hanging around our hero. But our hero was not so impatient. He held his head up and said it was true, that Ryan was his friend. They had been friends for a year and would continue to be friends. The leader couldn't understand why he was so calm, so he thought he was being too flippant about the Ogent family. He ordered the chief butler to take care of our hero and not to let others to know what had happened. The sister wanted to say something, but the head of agents said that our hero had confessed and he had decided everything. So the head of Ogent family even said that he had made a choice, so there is no turning back. Many butlers wanted to help our hero, but they understood that they must not interfere in the affairs of aristocrats, as this house is their life, so to protect it they must get rid of even the slightest conflict. Though many people may think now that it is not very right, but later they will be grateful for this choice. But at that moment Ryan entered the hall, who said that he would not let this happen. He asked who had allowed his friend to be killed without permission. The head of the family answered that he had, so Ryan immediately began to ask what he had done, as he had just become his friend. But the head of the family was on his side. He said that he didn't need to sin to deserve death. Ryan could not imagine how complicated the circumstances of the nobility were. So while his family is dealing with this difficult situation, he can enjoy the privileges of being the son of an aristocrat. But Ryan said that privilege didn't matter if he had to get rid of his friends to get it. His father said that he was acting too childish. He said that friendship with a nobleman implies an equal relationship. But does he really think that our hero sees him as a comrade? But on what grounds? In this world there are many people who want to sit on the necks of the nobility. But Ryan was sure that Cheyenne would never do that. But at that moment his father said one condition. He asked him to prove to his son that he and our hero were true friends. At that moment, Ryan stood still. If he says he can't, it's all over. But he can prove someone's feelings, but he can't say anything at random. If he were Cheyenne, he would easily defeat his father's policy. But what would happen if he were Cheyenne? He realized that it was the look he got as they fought. Ryan remembered what he'd said about how the best result was sometimes observation, so he wanted to understand the true intentions of the whole. He understood and began to put the puzzles together. He understood that before him was not only his father, but also a second-class nobleman, head of House Ojent, a black-haired clan, a certified fourth-class knight. But it was at that moment Ryan realized that this was not just a father and son quarrel. This was a sword fight, so at that moment he reached for his sword. 30 minutes earlier, before we had seen the whole situation, Ryan had implored his teacher to let him go because his friend could be killed, but the teacher asks if it was the boy who works in the library that Ryan was talking about. The teacher says that he is just a commoner, so at this moment Ryan was shocked. He could not even think that his teacher was like the others, although they themselves said that if you can talk to a person with a crossed sword, then he can become a true friend. At the same time he turned to his pupil and asked what is the most important thing for aristocrats. The most important thing is that they have to get rid of things that undermine the reputation of the family. Did Ryan even think he was a friend when he realized that he was no more important than a gnat? What kind of pressure was he under every day? His teacher said to try not to ask, to solve the problem, but Ryan could not just stand by and do nothing, because he was the first to ask to become friends with him. And the main thing was that he didn't want to be a coward. Master saw that Ryan determined. He knew that his student ardent, honest, naive, but you cannot become a great swordsman just by relying on these feelings, so that's why the teacher has high expectations and will be rooting for him. He held out his sword to him and told him to take it. He would let him go at that moment, but if he was not ready, he would not dare to make a step. So at that very moment Ryan said that he would never forget it. And the teacher had the last word. He said that to leave his friend is like leaving a part of himself. But Ryan knew that this was a sword fight and that his life was at stake. Ryan laughed, because it seemed that his father had almost defeated him again. But if he wanted proof, Ryan simply believed that the fact that he was his friend was the proof. The head said that it's not about wealth, and even now the reputation of the nobility is falling to the bottom, and he is ready to give up his son just to prevent the fall of the family. Everyone was shocked by the Lord's words, but Ryan began to bow and said that if it was necessary to protect his friend, he would be happy to leave. Father asked him to raise his sword, because if he really considered our hero to be his friend, he would risk his life. At this very moment Ryan began to draw his sword from its sheath, which threw my father off balance. He couldn't imagine his son ever raising the sword against him. But Ryan said that he was not pointing it at him, he was just showing his confidence. But the father could not understand how it happened, because his younger son doesn't make friends with other noblemen. He is far from their level, but he keeps someone worse near him, just to assert himself. But Ryan said that his father was wrong this time too, for his friend, Cheyenne, is a much better man than he is. He just wants our hero to shine brighter. The leader pointed his finger at our hero and asked what he had done to make his son so crazy that he convinced him to become friends. Our hero wanted to say that he didn't do anything, but Ryan rushed over and told him not to do anything, that he could protect him. Our hero had told him to calm down because it was his responsibility. Because when he proposed to become friends that one day our hero had to choose between friendship and his life, even if it meant that he would die here, our hero would never regret that he was friends with a man like Ryan. Our hero had such a fiery speech that even Ryan started to cry. He said that that's what he wanted to say, because even if Cheyenne was banished they would still be friends. Everybody thought that even though they are mature, they are still human beings with their feelings and emotions. A real friend is someone who will never turn away from someone, and everybody has such friends or dreams about such friends. But at this moment the grandfather of the family appeared. He shouted that there would be such a performance at all. He even talked about how being young was unbelievable. The sister was happy. She thought that everything would be alright because grandfather was now with them. The head thought that he would be later, but grandfather's friend had run away earlier with the young maid. Our hero could not believe his eyes because in front of him was General Tormia himself, swordsman of the 3rd degree, and also the grandfather of his friend. He sat down in his seat and said that this hall was as noisy as before and that the youth is basically the best time. The head just could not understand what was going on. He had already lost his fervor. He said that there is nothing wrong with this situation because the image of their family has fallen to the bottom. But grandfather Reina said that we should not make hasty conclusions because he also watched the whole situation from behind the scenes and it is obvious that many people here had something to say, so why not hear the rest? The first to come forward was the eldest daughter, Reina, who said that even though she met our hero yesterday, she could see that he was a very clever and talented child and in addition he had fulfilled all the requirements of the contract and had to leave the mansion today. Given all these circumstances, it's hard to say that Chiron had any evil intentions towards Reina, so in the end, she believes that his actions are not exactly a stain on the family's honor and reputation. The grandfather listened to his granddaughter, so he decided to listen to his other grandson Rai. He first said that he didn't like the boy, and the father was happy about that. He knew that he could rely on his son, but at that very moment, he continued by saying that he didn't care about that. The father asked what it was, how could it be? But my brother said that even if he did not like him, he has no right to decide whom he could be friends with. He just wants to finish everything as soon as possible and finally go to the royal palace. Grandfather also listened to him and made some comments about how he liked it better here than in his own house. He decided to ask someone who knew our hero much more than the others. He decided to ask Timurin, the deputy butler. He understood that they are the ones to whom it is forbidden to voice their opinions because they do the will of their masters. But after all, Timurin said that he did the work entrusted to him and did it perfectly, and at the same time he had finished 6 months earlier. The chief butler was furious, but the grandfather asked him if he knew about their friendship. But Timurin only said that he knew that he was frequently with the young master, but not that they were friends. However, in his opinion, if Shiro was just a child, he would not be able to sort out 10,000 books. Everyone understood that the atmosphere had smoothed out, and the only one who still wanted to punish Shirun was his father. However, the grandfather at that moment said that he could not allow it. Just then, the granddaughter didn't understand what was going on, but the father was very happy about it. He explained that he understood that our hero and Ryan are real friends, but anyway it is time to finish, because if everything continues in this way, then rumors will spread and it will become a weakness which political opponents can use against them. Everyone in this family has an important position in the kingdom, even Ryan has a certification test, but what can grandfather do since he has such a big family? He said that Chiron is a very clever boy, so he should understand everything. Grandfather looked at his grandson and understood that he was serious, but how could he not know what he was talking about? He did not even realize how great the weight of countless lives was at stake. Grandfather asked Chiron what he thought about this, even though he understood that our hero had taught his grandson true and sincere friendship. But could our hero end it there already? But he answered that he can't. This statement surprised everyone. But our hero went on to say that if he is a liability for Ryan, he will never see him again. But that doesn't mean that he can't continue to consider him a friend. He and Ryan are friends, so if they take all this into account, he will follow any orders they give him. Ryan was very sad and worried at this moment. He knew that even if Chiron didn't die, it would be a relief. That was what he thought in his heart, but he already knew that leaving his friend would be like leaving himself. But in any case it was impossible to agree on that, so he raised his sword up. His sister shouted to her board not to do it, but it was already too late. He plunged his sword into the floor and said that he is the real Ryan Ogent, the third son of the Ogent family from now on. Becomes the sword of Chiron. The father cried out loudly, saying that his son was a complete fool. We are given to understand that the history of the Oath of Knighthood goes back to the formation of the Kingdom of Tormia. In the years of chaos, both small and large countries were fighting for territories. Athalphus, the first of the strongest, succeeded in uniting and creating Tormia, but this new kingdom had to rebel against the strong neighboring countries. So instead of banishment, the defeated kings were allowed to rule their own territories, and in the process came the legendary knightly oath. As a reward for the obligation to become the only sword of the Lord, they were given the status of nobility, so that is how the nobility was born. So to take the oath means to be worse than a embroidered so. Everybody was shocked, but Ryan was in a good mood, because now he won't be able to take the oath back. Our hero went to him and asked what he had done, but the grandfather was serious, because if his grandson really said that he would be his sword, then our hero is so clever. He asked if our hero is that clever. He asked what it is about him that makes him shine in his eyes, and Ryan is not. Ryan smiled and said that the sword does not judge, it only protects. Grandfather laughed with all his might and said that immature people need to do at least that to reach the heights. He even smiled, because Ryan is good only in words, but with such disgusting swordsmanship skills he felt sorry for our hero that he has such a sword as Ryan. Grandpa stood up and said that enough with Ryan, because it was already over. He said that even if Ryan wasn't the best sword, he would never point his blade at him. He asked to take care of his grandson, to which our hero smiled and thanked him for approving him. He also said that since the two had become sworn friends he couldn't let them go, and he shouted to the chief butler to get a carriage to bring Sharon's parents here as well. Our hero said that he shouldn't have done that, but Ryan said that he didn't do it because they are friends, but because he is different from his brother and he has the power to attract people. That's why Ryan decided to bet his life on a man like our hero. Our hero blushed, because those big words again. He felt that he was under pressure, and also said that Ryan would have to work harder if he decided to protect him. But while they were talking, his sister came in to ask if it was true that her brother had lost in a duel. But she saw her brother on the floor. He shouted at her to get out as well, but our hero said that his sister had helped them tremendously this time. Ryan asked what his father and grandfather were doing, but his sister said that it's no good, because he had sworn an oath of knighthood. They are thinking over a plan of actions. But in any case his father wants to enroll them in the Kaizen Swordsmanship Academy, because Ryan had said before that our hero has a talent for swordsmanship. Our hero wondered if it was true, but his sister said that he was almost part of the family because she had told him about his abilities. Apparently the whole family wants to make Sharon more successful than Ryan. He shouted that he was sent to school just when he could play with Sharon all day long. However, while his sister was beating him, he said that Sharon will be a mage because he discovered the spirit state. The sister was surprised at first and then thought a little bit, did he not accidentally swear to a future mage? Could not a swordsman be weaker than a wizard? But to this he said only that she should get out of the room. That's when the sister realized that the last time our hero fought Ryan, he was able to use the spirit zone. That's why he won, because he could anticipate all of his opponent's blows. Sister highly praised this way of winning, because even he could not have guessed it before. Our hero had wondered how it was possible. So the sister said that our hero is simply amazing, because she had heard at school that the higher is the level of concentration, the stronger is his spirit zone. And moreover it is amazing that our hero has reached this level of concentration with a sword in his hands. Our hero was confused, but both agents understood that while our hero stays like this, he will never be able to have a girlfriend. So his sister decided to break the silence and said that she would talk about it with his grandfather. After all, Sharon's career will only depend on whether Ryan will attend fencing school or not. Ryan immediately stood up and asked, so what would happen to his old teacher? But his sister said that Master Keat knew everything. That's why he had decided to end the contract with Ryan tomorrow and he would read his farewell speech in the morning. Ryan couldn't believe it, and most likely the teacher was already far away. But at that moment the butler came in and said that the family was already there, so they were waiting for him in the hall. The head also said that our hero could meet them in person if he wanted to. The happiness of our hero was indescribable. He was glowing, so he said he would go to them right away. He left his seat so quickly that even butlers following him on the stairs begged him to be more careful, as if he did not notice them. But our hero asked not to talk to him like they talk to noblemen, because he remained an ordinary peasant. They said that it is not allowed, and they will be executed, but our hero smiled and said that he would not tell anybody. Our hero opened the door in the waiting room, where he saw his relatives. He ran as fast as he could into their arms. Our hero was looking at them and noticed that they had lost a lot of weight. Maybe they had not slept all night. They were worried if Sharon would come home alive. But the heroine's mother said, with tears in her eyes, that she and her father lived very well and had plenty to eat. And the father asked why his son had not let them down earlier, since he had already finished working. Wasn't he supposed to go home? He even wondered if those noblemen were keeping his son there just to keep him from leaving. But Sharon said it was nothing like that. They were just giving him a good opportunity. His parents didn't understand what he was saying, so our hero said everything that he had experienced. His parents were shocked by what they heard. They couldn't believe that their son had found a friend who had given him his knighthood oath just by working in the library. But his father was different. He asked him to explain if it was true what he had just said, because if not, it wasn't even a funny joke. He asked if someone was really making fun of him, but our hero stood his ground, saying that nothing of the kind was true. Everything he had said was true. Father immediately grasped him, hugging him, and almost strangled him, saying that he knew that after getting into the house of aristocrats nobody was the same. But at that moment the head of the Ogent family, Biskov, arrived. Behind him stood Ryan and Riane, who we already knew. Sharon's parents could not believe it, so they stood up and bowed. They also asked why they deserved the attention. But Biskov wondered if our hero had already told them. And at that moment, only now did the parents realize that everything their son had said was true and nothing else. But already recovering from the shock, they woke up at the table, covered with all kinds of expensive dishes and so social, but still they did not fully understand what was going on around them. Their father did not know what the knight's oath was, but it could not be that the nobility could show such kindness to the family of commoners, so my father decided to ask again over a cup of tea. Was it true that the young lord of their family bowed to his son, because he was a little worried about everything? But Biscoff said that yes, it was a little difficult for everyone, but still, for the Ogent family, a family that honors the politics of militarism, the knight's oath is undeniable. So if they were disrespected simply because of the difference in status, Ryan's honor would be tarnished. Even now their family will use a respectful form of communication with them, so please don't feel uncomfortable. Their family will never turn their backs on Cheyenne from now on. But the grandfather, who was sitting somewhere in the corner, was saying that he would never have believed that he would hear a word or two from his son after all this time. But our hero began to respect the Ogent family even more, because to make such a difficult decision for the sake of his family and to treat people with honor and respect corresponds only to them. Though he had nothing else to do but to take the peasant under his wing, yet Biscoff did not intimidate anyone. So here the head interrupted everyone's speculations. He said that to be closer to the point, he would like to notice that our hero is already able to use the state of the soul. And the state of soul is not something that can be achieved by hard work, but a talent which is destined to be born with. Well, as the aim of our hero is to become a magician, he will help him to get an unofficial magical license as soon as possible. He even thinks that the Academy of Magic of Alpheus, which is one of the 5 most prestigious schools in the kingdom, will suit him. He also added that he didn't think Cheyenne would have to go there, but because of the new privileges he would have, he shouldn't refuse, and he should go there to meet the standards of the House of Ogents. Grandfather was a little nervous, so he asked his son to name the most important thing for the lumberjack's family. He said that if he graduated from there, he would become a wizard. The father was shocked, but our hero had only one thought about that magic academy. But still there was one problem. It was in the belonging of our hero. Magic schools were created for the elite, so no one but the children of aristocrats were enrolled there, so the only solution would be adopt Cheyenne. That's what Ryan's grandfather said. His father was shocked, but they let him know that it was the only way they had found it during a family meeting. They gave a document to our hero's parents and told him that they have a young cousin who does not have children yet, so if they add our hero's name to the roster, the problem will be solved immediately. They also explained that they do not have any intention to steal the child, because everything will be on paper. This is the only way for our hero to become a nobleman. Cheyenne's father could not believe that his son would become a nobleman, because no one even knows who on earth will have a chance to change his origins, and even if it seems that they allow them to steal their child. The father turned to his son, as if he was asking with all his appearance, what should he do? But what if our hero had already made up his mind beforehand? But our hero held his father's hand and told him that he could not become someone else's adopted son. His father looked at him with eyes full of hope, but his older sister said that it would only be a document and nothing will change, but our hero can achieve his dream. His grandfather was looking at him and told that not everybody had such a chance in the world, but our hero stood his ground. He said that if he had to change his father, it would be better for him to live as a peasant. Grandfather shouted that commoners are not enrolled in the Academy of Magicians, but our hero said that in this case he would not go there and become a magician. But grandfather got up from his chair and loudly said the name of our hero. He asked why our hero is so unwavering, because there are things that must be given up to achieve success. So if he can't do it, doesn't it mean that his dream was insignificant? Our hero said that since it is so, it doesn't even matter what his dream is, because he got it from his parents. If his parents are the roots that taught him to read, then his dreams are the fruit of their nourishment. Everything he got was because of them. The one chance he got, compared to the countless possibilities his family had given him. He said that giving up his parents was like simply drying up and dying. He was grateful for the great offer, but the only parents he had were the 2 people standing beside him. Everyone was shocked by this announcement. Grandfather thought, what is it in our hero, morality, guilt? But at that moment our hero's father asked to adopt him. Grandfather said that this must not happen, because the opinion of our hero must be taken into consideration. But at that moment, Cheyenne's father said something that no one could have expected. He said that Cheyenne was not his biological son. His mother was shocked because he had said that, but our hero didn't understand either. But Vincent went on to say that he and his wife had never been able to make a baby, but at one point, Cheyenne was with them. He was sure his son was from a noble family, but it was Vincent who did not deserve such a beautiful son. He said that even if he went to another family, it would not mean that he would abandon his roots. Biscoff wondered if it was true, though on reflection everyone was sure that our hero was definitely not the son of a family of woodcutters. After all, it was Cheyenne who was not like his parents, but wasn't this message a rejection of his son? Our hero at this moment asked his father how could he say such a thing without discussing it with his son and the other members of his family. But he said that since his son had grown up he should know about it. But our hero asked his father if he thought that our hero did not know. On the contrary, he didn't ask because that's the only way a man can have two real parents. But now his father wants him to have six. But his father got covered with sweat and started to cry because he did not want our hero to give up his dream. But our hero didn't refuse it either, it's just that if he tries, he will have opportunities. But has he ever thought about how a child who has been abandoned by his parents twice will feel? Vincent immediately hugged his son and told him to forgive him because he would never let that happen again. He wouldn't leave his son for sure, he said, to forgive a father who was as stupid as he was. Everyone in the room knew that the things they do for their children hurt them, because being a parent has never been easy. But they suffer sometimes, too, trying to raise their children without help. So Biscoff, after looking at the whole situation from the outside, said that at the Academy of Magic Alpheus there are some special agreements about which his father might agree. Grandfather did not understand how a man like him could ever agree on anything, but he asked, how is it that Alpheus is not indebted to him? But the grandfather smiled at that moment and said that for a man who can push his ears, his son was a perfect example. So it was after this comment, 3 days later, while Ryan was still on his way to fencing school, that, thanks to the grace of the Odin's family, his family was able to stay at their house for a while. Even though his father apologized to Shiren, he wondered how long he could hold out this time. But there was also the advantage of the fact that now he and Ryan had a lot of free time. And then, 3 days later, Ryan had to leave after all. He cried, because now he would have to get in a carriage and go to fencing school. Why couldn't he just enroll, just like our hero, and enroll the next year? But our hero said that even they didn't know if he would get in, so he said that he would write a letter every day and offered to meet him during the vacations. But at that moment Ryan put his hand on his friend's shoulder and said that he had to become a magician, because he would become the strongest knight and the sword that could protect Shiren. He talked about it, but at one moment he was slapped by his sister, who told him to concentrate on his studies because she was worried about him. And she told our hero to spend more time with his family because her grandfather would take care of everything. Our hero thanked her and bowed, and she thought, what a special child our hero is. After all, at first she thought that our hero is just like a little brother, but he really is an incredibly sensitive boy. Even in such terrible situations he could not refuse his beliefs. So she said that he just needed to try because she should become a mage and also take care of her brother. Our hero also got in the carriage with his folks, but he heard from the other map that our hero had to lie to everyone when he got to the Academy of Magic, and our hero also told his friend to do it. It is the meeting of such people as Rihanna Ogent and Shiren Arian, such ardent young men, that will remain in history as the beginning of the incident that shattered the structure of their world. We saw in front of us this time the Academy of Magic of Alpheus. Grandpa Ogenta was sitting at his mug of tea and asked what was there because someone had been thinking for half an hour. But the old man, whom we met a long time ago, said that even though he had been a good friend for 50 years, he could not accept his request. He had suffered much because of him in his youth, and he had the courage to refuse his request. But the old man said that somehow or other the agreements were not created as a backup for the plans of the nobility, because many applications come every year, but the special agreements have their own requirements too. Ogent thought that his interlocutor was really stubborn and harmful, because he made him wait, but he did not even think for a moment, so that Ogent said that our hero was not quite an ordinary boy. The headmaster got curious, so he said with his arms crossed that he didn't ask to see some strange child. On the contrary, he asked to see a friend of his youngest grandson, and he was really something. Does it mean that the principal thought when he saw our hero? He thought he was looking at himself when he was young. The principal asks what's wrong. If he's so talented, why doesn't he come here himself? Doesn't that mean that he has a problem? At that moment, Ogent got quiet and said that there was one problem, a very big one. He said that he wasn't a nobleman. At that moment, the headmaster didn't seem to be himself. He looked into Ogent's eyes and asked if it was the blonde guy with blue eyes. We see the whole situation from the grandfather of the Ogent family's point of view, and all his thoughts about our hero come back to us. He thought our hero was a really smart kid who could manipulate adults, but when he offered to set him up, he refused. Ogent laughed and asked what the principal thought about it, because no one would refuse such an offer to become a nobleman. But the director realized that our hero was the man who understood the truth of cause and effect, because without cause there is no effect. Ogent also understood that there are many people who do not understand this and go astray. A new opportunity can always arise, but when people give up their beliefs they end up losing everything. It's our hero who will never give up what he thinks is right, but isn't it all a reminder of their youth? The director thought that the fact that a man does not make concessions means that everyone can consider his opinions correct, or on the contrary, condemn. He thought it was dangerous. The director was silent for a while. He remembered something and asked him if it meant that he had not forgiven himself. But he began to support him by saying that he had trained too many talented people, so shouldn't this offense be dropped? But the principal said that even though his friend was arrogant, he was right, because he teaches children so that they do not become like him. So if our hero is like him, there is no guarantee that he won't go down the same awful path. But Ojin said that his friend, Alpheus, was a once-in-a-century genius. He was called the light of the Milch family, but one day he took a wrong turn and almost lost everything, and yet he was able to return. Although Ojin could not believe that he would become an old-fashioned headmaster in such a remote place. But the headmaster was not silent and also said that he never would have believed that his friend would also help the heavens and he would officially become a third-class fool. He was even a little worried about the future of the kingdom of Tormia. The headmaster laughed, so Ojin asked if it could be fate, considering the fact that even he knew him, because the boy who had disappeared 4 years ago had returned. But the director did not believe in fate, and yet the talent that had been hindered by his status had changed his route for 4 years, and now he was standing right in front of him. Isn't that fate? So at the same moment the director turned directly to Ojin and said he would accept Shiren. So in the spring, 3 months later, our 17-year-old hero was on his way to the carriage, saying goodbye to his family. He asked how he looked, but everyone was pleased. At that moment his father was coughing behind them and asked if he had forgotten to do something. But Shiren said he was 17, he wouldn't kiss him, but his father was serious and said that if his son didn't do it, he would. He kissed his son on the forehead and said that he would succeed because he believed in him. But Shiren asked if everything was all right, because the head of the family said that he would find them a house in the city, but his father was proud of his job as a hunter, so he said that he would cope with this life in the mountains. He was even resigned to the fact that no matter how much he refused to let the Ojin family pay him, they would still impose it on them. Our hero thought that his enrollment in the Academy of Magic would be a celebration for the whole village, but his father never told anyone about it. And it was obvious to our hero that he refused to live in the city because he didn't want to be able to blackmail Shiren with his family. Our hero got in the carriage, and so began his first day at the Academy of Magic. Our hero was a little bit uncomfortable getting out of that very carriage, but Timirin said that they had arrived, so he had to get out. Our hero got out and the Academy of Alpheus appeared before his eyes. He told us that his job was to pay the tuition as well as the materials, and that our hero's job was simply to learn well. Our hero thanked the butler, but he asked him not to do that. But our hero nevertheless bowed to him and said that until this very moment he simply could not thank him, so he expressed his gratitude because Timirin considered him worthy, so our hero will never forget this kindness in his life. Timirin said that a peasant will always be a peasant, but he will never be better than a nobleman, but not everyone has this opportunity. He understood that when our hero enters the school, many noblemen will not look at him with very pleasant eyes and also throw looks, but nevertheless our hero should remain as stubborn as he was up to that moment. Timirin began to smile and said that only then will Shiren reach the end if he can just stand it. So if our hero is ready to move out already, he asks him to follow him because he still needs to be registered at the school. Alpheus Academy of Magic. This is the very place which is called the Cradle of Geniuses. If our hero were to study there, who would he meet on his way? After seeing our hero off and registering him, Temuarn bids him farewell, but if our hero needs anything, he will ask to contact him. Our hero watched and saw that in the Academy of Magic Alpheus used the 10-class system. There are 420 students in total, of which 30 are in the graduating class. Only 10 graduate each year. At that moment, our hero was called by the headmaster, Alpheus. He asked if he was the student. He asked if our hero remembers him. They had met before, but our hero has never forgotten that meeting. He is very grateful for such a great chance. But the director said that they would have time to talk, but they must hurry because our hero will have to pass the entrance test first. Our hero did not understand what kind of test we are talking about. He does not know anything. But the principal said that there won't be anything difficult, because it will simply define the class our hero will go to, so there is nothing to worry about. The headmaster asked if our hero could enter the spirit zone, to which our hero immediately replied that of course he could. The director looked with some apprehension at our hero. After all, he was able to open the spiritual zone by himself. But the director did not like everything, as what a boy Shiren would have grown if he had been given such an opportunity from his childhood. But even though it's very late, it's Alpheus who will have to teach him the basics. There will only be children in the hall for the entrance test, so if they come early, it will spoil Shiren's reputation. The headmaster has found a way out of this situation. He asks our hero if he wants to look around the school a bit. At that time, while our hero and the principal were walking along the corridors, our hero noticed something very strange. But the principal asked us to pay attention to the classroom where the classes will be held and also to the class for beginners, from the 10th grade to the 8th grade. Our hero could not take his eyes away from the fact that many people used magic there, but Alpheus said that the place where they are going now is a little different. We could see the highest ranked class next, classes 7 to 4. Our hero noticed that the atmosphere was very different, because most likely there were peers around him. But what were they talking so animatedly about? They were talking about energy and the state of the points. Our hero didn't understand what they were talking about, so he was very scared. It is as if they all spoke the same language, but he did not understand, so what is it? At one point someone even undermined our hero, and that made the director smile on his face. She said that she had miscalculated a little somewhere, so the director gave her advice right away. Our hero could not understand how such things can be allowed, does not anyone care. What's more, the director did not stop anyone, but asked them to do it again. Our hero seemed to be in another world, but at one point we were able to meet a familiar face that we did not see, or just did not notice our hero. Our hero, walking farther and farther down the corridors of the school, noticed a board with notices where there was an allocation of the entire middle class. In the first place, our hero noticed a noblewoman of the first class. Our hero was delighted because all of those listed there had the same abilities as our hero, but if you think about it, it was Karami's who towers above them all. Our hero was also very eager to compete with anyone, because in this place he would study again from the very beginning. Our hero's only wish at that moment was that he wanted to take first place in the ranking. Our hero thought, isn't it the same Karami's? Wasn't she the one from the first place? But after looking at her, our hero realized that it was the same girl who wanted to teach him a lesson. Our hero turned around and thought only that she had not seen him. He wished it were like that. But that same Amy passed him by, but her friend apparently had a big crush on our hero. She thought our hero was so handsome that he was perfect. But Karami's herself thought that she had seen him somewhere. Immediately her friend began to ask Karami's if our hero had interested her, because she didn't care about guys at all. But Karami's said it wasn't like that, he just looked so familiar. But her friends couldn't settle down, she wanted him to tell her that she liked him. Karami's was and is considered the most popular girl of the middle class. She also constantly rejected admissions from older and younger students, from classmates. She was the most exemplary of all the exemplary students, and the only person who knew about her past, who was going to enter this academy, was our hero, who was sweating with fear. Then we can see the third testing area. Many children are sitting on chairs, and it looks like they have already finished everything. So the director immediately asked our hero to keep an eye on what the other kid who was a little farther away was doing. The child who was standing on the stove in the middle was asked to enter into a spirit zone and to feel that the letters on the floor had changed. The jury asked him to say what he was feeling, because only then they would be able to determine the strength and mobility of his spirit zone. The director told our hero that he must just answer the teacher's questions honestly. He was also asked if he could do magic, and he answered that he could lift things up into the air. Apparently, the more you can do, the higher your score will be. At that moment the child was asked what was the furthest number. He answered that it was 6. This answer surprised the teachers. Then the principal explained that the number the child had just said indicated the diameter of his or her spirit zone. The next question was about the color, to which the child replied that he saw red. It was this color that determined him to be a divergent type, which meant that his spirit zone was quite high for his age. They began to ask him about the distance of objects, their appearance, and their temperature. All the answers of this boy incredibly surprised teachers, and in principle all the students this year were amazing. So the next student to be tested was our hero, who was encouraged by the principal. He asked him not to be afraid and just give it his all. Teachers were looking at him questioningly, because he was the same boy who had got into their academy through a special selection. However, it seemed to them that our hero is a strange choice, because at this age it is quite late to start learning. Our hero also borrowed the name of the Ojent family, which seemed a rather strange gesture. Is our hero's family really that unknown? Many people thought that our hero's talent had been discovered too late, but even so, he would quickly be buried in this school. Our hero was asked if he could do magic. But our hero didn't even study anything, because he doesn't know how. The teacher got nervous at once, because if he hadn't studied anything, he should know some basic things, right? The headmaster thought that that would be what they would think, because magic is the release of knowledge from the mind. Noble children are taught many things and they naturally come to use magic, but our hero has no such knowledge. Our hero was immediately asked to enter the same circle and use the zone. Our hero entered the zone, and immediately a lot of things appeared in front of him that he did not notice when he was not in the circle. He was asked to name the farthest number, but our hero was silent. Everybody thought that our hero was embarrassed, so even the director said that our hero should be more honest, because they were not comparing him with others, they were just looking for an appropriate teaching image. Our hero said that he could see the number, but it was so far away that he couldn't see it. They told him that our hero should see it, because that is the only way for them to determine something. But our hero said that that was not the case. He could see and feel the number, but its value continued to grow with each passing second. The teacher said that this is normal, so he asked us to start with the first digits that our hero sees. Our hero began by saying that the row begins with 3.14. Then the teacher started to say that there are no such numbers, but is our hero sure? But our hero was absolutely sure that he could see it. The teacher realized that this could be possible, because there had been several cases where the number began to show the number pi. However, this only means that the zone is too large for the given values. Could it be that the zone of our hero exceeded the frame of 30 meters? Then the next question was, which color does our hero feel the strongest? Cheyenne answered that it was blue, which surprised everyone even more. It was then that the director understood why his friend had been so insistent on our hero being taken. But he wondered with horror if there was a level for such a talent as our hero. Even the teacher asked how many spheres were floating around our hero. Our hero saw them and already wanted to count them, but he realized that he could just feel them. So our hero named the number of 867 spheres. But the principal had grown much paler because he understood that all of this was very dangerous. At that moment another teacher asked how cold our hero was. Our hero said at once that he was very cold, for he was frozen. Our hero had an abnormally high value, so they asked him to leave peacefully, because now they, the teachers, will have a meeting about where to send our hero and all those who have passed the test. But as soon as our hero came out of the door, everyone started to discuss him. They could not make a single thought, because how can a 17-year-old boy reach a diameter of more than 30 meters? The size of the zone exceeded his concentration, but the concentration of our hero was 86.7%. And moreover it was a pure concentration without using any strengthening skills. Our hero was even compared to a monk who trained in the forest for a long time. But at one moment another teacher who did not like our hero asked if it was possible, and our hero lied, because all the clues that our hero had named the 17-year-old boy who did not know magic was simply nonsense. Could it be that he just called random numbers? But the teacher with purple hair said that there is no point in lying to the students, as this test determines where they will get. Moreover, it seems that even the teachers had forgotten that the number pi is displayed as a wrong code. They thought that our hero was not such an ordinary student, and he was not doing it for attention. But at that moment the principal came up to them, who asked, so where to send our hero? The teacher said that since they study theory in the 6th grade, they began to teach magic in the 5th grade. So, considering that our hero's spiritual zone is developed, she recommended the 5th grade. It was Sina Oliver, a certified mage of the 6th rank. However, another magician, Ted, objected to this decision, because our hero was only a 17-year-old boy who did not know magic. He thought that if they sent him to such a class, he would not be able to cope with his duties. But Oliver said that even if he did, not all students are like him. But Ted was angry because he thought that Oliver wanted him because she was the one who was in charge of the 5th grade. There was a dispute between them, so the other teachers decided to confer without them. They knew our hero had talent, but he was still a student, so they thought about teaching him step by step from the 10th grade. But if they sent him to the kids, he would just lose any motivation to learn. But another elderly woman suggested the 7th grade, because it was a high-level class where the basics of the zone are taught, so if our hero is so talented, he could easily be transferred to an older class. The principal at this very moment decided that the old teacher was right, so our hero will study in the 7th grade. Once again, we can see what the 10-class system is. It consists in the fact that depending on the grade, students are divided into 10 classes of different levels of difficulty. It is then they are divided into 3 main groups: U primary classes from 10th to 8th. Their students are simply focused on the development of the zone. Then there are high-level classes from 7th to 4th, where students gain knowledge for the use of magic in the zone. And finally, graduating classes 3 to 1. There they undergo stern training to prepare professional mages. But at this point our hero had already made his way to his class. The teacher introduced our hero to everyone. Many students had a strange opinion of him, because it seems that our hero was too old, but he was immediately enrolled in the middle class. Our hero was glad, because finally he was able to go where he wanted to go all his life. He got into the Academy of Magic. This particular academy occupies 75.42 kilometers of mountainous territory. Including the dormitory, it has more than 33 buildings and 40 training centers. Even though it's only allowed to leave its territory during vacations, this doesn't cause the slightest discomfort, as everything is necessary in the school. Classes end at 5 p.m. and then students have free time. They go to around-the-clock Bible study, or just form research groups with similar interests with other students, fueling their thirst for learning. All of this was the driving force behind the creation of this prestigious school. Yes, and our hero thought that everything was as he expected, because the classes are difficult, and there are many subjects that require a huge baggage of knowledge. Even noblemen, who have studied since childhood, find it difficult, but our hero will do his best and shake it all. Basics of knowledge. It is thanks to her chronological order of history that he memorized all the knowledge of the world accumulated gradually. Our hero was in class and the teacher said that the lesson was over, but our hero was very nervous, because he knew that after lunch he would have practical lessons on the state of the spirit, but the schedule did not say where they would be held. He asked her if she knew where to go to the training camp. Our hero saw that she was quite shy, because she could not have guessed that Cheyenne was talking to her. However, she still said that today the practice will be on the second joint training ground. Our hero didn't know what joint meant, so the girl explained that twice a week all the middle classes train together. All middle school classes train together, and today will be the day of instruction. Our hero could not imagine how it was possible that all middle school classes would train together. However, the training ground was already boiling and bustling with life because they're past the same red-haired, as they called her, high school girl. All asked to sit with them, but Amy was unwavering because she did not pay attention to anyone. Our hero noticed how she passed and realized that he was incredibly popular. He certainly would not want to run into her. However, to his misfortune, they have such joint classes twice a week. However, our hero wondered if he would be able to fit in as well as be unnoticed. But at that moment a teacher had already arrived. Her name was Atella Romi. She was a mage of the 6th rank. She asked if it was true that many people were here for the first time this year. So even if it was, she would be giving them classes like this from now on. She said that even this year they had a newcomer, our hero, and everyone rushed to him. She asked if our hero would like to stand up and greet everyone else. He got up and said hello to everybody and then said some words to himself. But then he stopped because he did not even know how to begin to say something right. At that moment Amy and her friend were sitting and said that our hero was the man whom they had seen yesterday. But Amy herself could not understand who our hero was because he looked familiar, but she could not remember, although she had seen him with her red eyes. And at one point Amy's friend was approached by another student. She asked if she knew our hero. If not, even so he is incredible, because now the teacher's attention is tightly fixed on him. They say that his results on the entrance exam were unbelievable and astonishing. Everyone was wondering what kind of destiny he was from. However, just at that moment Amy remembered who that new pupil was. He remembered him and she felt very uncomfortable. Further, we see that the family Karmi is considered a generation of geniuses. They say that their unique ability Red Eyes is betrayed only to the heirs of Karmis. It allows them to remember with pinpoint accuracy specific events, so that's why the concept of learning is useless for them. Karmi's youngest daughter, Amy, was recognized as the most talented daughter of the family in principle. She might even have inherited Karmi's genius completely. All her childhood she was bored, she was always winning. She was very angry because the family is a family, but they were not involved in her efforts. She thought she could do anything she wanted. But one day her whole life was turned upside down. The moment she accidentally met the peasant boy in the alley. All her friends looked at Amy and did not understand what was wrong, but she immediately said that just shoes are very uncomfortable. She again turned her gaze to our hero and could not believe it, because all the memories of self-discovery of the Red Eye simply cannot be wrong. All the time she thought that our hero was a nobleman, but it seemed that he was a commoner. How did he even get into the academy? But she immediately began to think that all was lost, for to May her past was her dark, shameful secret. She immediately floated, because she made sure that not a single little thing reminded her of her past. However, does our hero not remember her? All memories of what she had done with our hero, and also possible fragments of the future where our hero is telling about his past, came to her mind moment by moment. But most of all she was afraid that everybody would find out that she was very interested in boys. She even wanted to undress him. But Karmis immediately realized that she should somehow prevent everything. But our hero, on the other hand, felt a chill, for he could probably feel her gaze on him. But the teacher decided to continue the lesson, saying that the zone is the mental state of the magician. Its first form is the form of a sphere, as it is easier and easier to concentrate on it, but it is in practice that it may be ineffective. Exactly at this moment it will show everyone in the visible zone. Our hero also saw the zone of the whole teacher. She went on to say that it is so, that the basic form is a sphere, so as she said, she is barely taken, so she will lead by example. She was able to create a target next to her and then just use magic to hit outside of it. She explained that since the diameter of her zone is 10 meters and her target is 20 meters away, she uses a fireball, fire-type magic. Our hero could not tear himself away because now he could see how they use magic. The teacher had created a small fireball and then tried to hit the target, but in the end it could not reach it. She made it clear that most magic is not able to go outside the zone, so it keeps its form inside the zone. However, everyone can expand the area in the direction she showed and everything will work out. Our hero, just like all the other children in the 7th grade, was incredibly surprised by such a sight. He did not even know that it is so fashionable to change the shape of the zone. However, the teacher said that this method has a disadvantage as well. She said that changing the form of their zone requires enormous concentration, and in a real battle every second is counted. Constantly changing the spiritual zone is just ineffective, so that in battles, many simply use 4 forms. Form of defense, attack, target, evasion. The teacher decided to start with the defensive form, which was presented in the form of a cube and prevented the destruction of the zone from attacking. She said that the more faces, the higher the protective function. Next is the star shape, which is a form of attack, which allows you to catch the movement of the target, and also this form is most useful in a battle with many enemies. Next is a form of target, which was designed for long-distance battles. However, it is still not very good against fast-moving targets. After all, the main thing to worry about when using it is the speed of rotation. The students wondered how the teacher could change the form so quickly. Could they do the same? But our hero thought that using the same method it was possible to use the spiritual zone with a diameter of 10 meters in real battles. The teacher said that it was not a secret that even 5th graders had difficulty using it, so I decided to start with an example. The pupils who sat behind our hero thought that if they could cope at once they would pass the advanced classes. But as soon as the teacher used the form, all the students were shocked because the form went beyond the body. The teacher was not able to understand how it could be so because the zone was a mental state of the magician. But is it possible to separate thoughts from the body at all? Our hero wondered what was in the center of the zone. But the teacher said that the form of evasion is insanely difficult to use, so much so that only specially trained mages do it. Its advantage is that as long as the wizard is not in the center, the zone has no restrictions on movement. Thus there is no need for instantaneous application, and the range of influence is infinitely huge. At that moment, the students who were sitting behind our hero wondered how their teachers were able to do that. Our hero had also thought that behind such a nice appearance hides great skills. The teacher also asked if they would be disappointed if they missed the practice in the first lesson, so she asked to call them Amy, the very outstanding student. Everyone immediately shouted that they were very happy, but when Amy's friends looked at her, she was not in the best of spirits. It is at this point that she did not want to be the center of attention. So it is Amy who will show the shape of the target, because this shape is one of the 4 forms of zone. Its advantage is that it is very effective at long range, but as already said before against moving targets as well as a large number of opponents. However, if it is supported by someone who is able to simultaneously rotate the zone and control it at high speed, almost all of the under-deliveries disappear. After all, it is this form that will be the most insurmountable force for enemies at long range. All watched as Amy worked and they were very surprised by everything she did. Although most speed training participants use all 4 forms of the zone, in spite of this, many always lured the first place using only the form of the target. Our hero couldn't think of anything other than the fact that Amy's thesis is simply unbeatable, because not only does she turn the zone while stationary, but she also sweeps away everything in her path. She even smashed the targets in one fell swoop and her expression on her face said she had the freedom to do so. She was elegant in almost every move she made. Our hero constantly heard that many people wanted to go out with her, but many said that she was not even interested in them. Our hero at that moment understood why almost all the boys were crazy about her. She was not only a beautiful aristocrat, but also excellent in everything. She was just an incredible person. But he wondered, why was she hanging out with those thugs? Amy finished her performance and her speed shooting was finished in 20 seconds, and she was able to reach level 9. She stood on the spot and immediately threw a glance at our hero. Our hero did not understand what that meant, but everyone just exploded, because never before had Amy looked at someone like that. Everyone realized that she was looking at the newcomer. But Amy did not even want to look at him. She did it without thinking and began to worry very much. But our hero was sitting in a cold sweat, and nobody could understand if they knew each other. Both people were confident that each remembered the other. Amy sat down at her desk and realized that if our hero let the rumors about her, then her reputation would be ruined, and whether it is necessary to shut him up. But after thinking a little more carefully decided that we need to calm down, because she, the best student of the academy, and even if he said something, most likely, no one will believe it. One awkward movement, and there would be unnecessary misunderstandings, which should not be allowed. But her friend wondered what was wrong with her, because when she was in the zone, she blushed, but she decided to keep quiet and say that nothing like that had happened to her. After the demonstration, all classes were divided up for practice. The teacher was working with the 7th graders and asked them to start with a protective form, because it would be wonderful to create at least one. And wizards need to stay focused to survive on the battlefield. Our hero stood there and decided to focus on what he felt was compressing and compacting his zone. He had to feel how it compacts and creates a structure and then raise its boundaries to prevent destruction. Our hero wondered if he had succeeded, but on the other hand he could not be sure until he had seen it. Our hero thought that it would be much easier if he could use the same visible zone that his teacher had used at the beginning. He went straight to his teacher and asked if he could use the visible zone. The teacher was a little hesitant. After all, the older pupils should have used it first, but our hero understood that one should not think of others when you use magic, and also when you study it. After all, the opportunity to improve one's skills does not always appear. But the teacher, looking at the field, noticed that no one uses it, so it would be even better if our hero wanted to try first. However, the words that were said to Amy that our hero was in the visible zone made her worried. She spit out her water and asked what our hero can do. After all, he is only in the 7th grade. However, Amy's friend was more worried about her than Cheyenne. Many people gathered to look at our hero, so they used their zone. Everyone was surprised because no one could imagine that he had such a large size. Diameter said. But our hero only now began to think about it, because how big will be his diameter? Many people couldn't believe that the diameter of someone would be 20, isn't it maximum 13? But our hero understood that his diameter is much bigger than one could imagine, so with all his strength he tried to shrink it like a soap bubble to its minimum value. On his first day of training he definitely did not want to attract more attention from outside. He wanted to create a protective form, but on the contrary all his boundaries began to collapse instead of rising. Our hero did not understand what had just happened, was he not afraid? But when he came to his senses he understood that his attention would not be disturbed by this, because what is the difference between what is happening outside and inside the zone? He understood that something must have caused it, but he realized that he had made a mistake because the teacher had shown everything so calmly. At this moment, everyone is concentrating when they change the shape of the zone, so when our hero is trying to reduce it, he is concentrating as well. So if the problem is that he is making his zone smaller than it is, then he just needs the normal size. Immediately our hero's zone began to gain momentum, which began to surprise everyone even more. Figures reached 41 meters, so even Amy was a little shocked. She could not imagine how big our hero's zone could be. So it was at this point our hero was relieved that his zone aspired to one size. He decided to surrender it, so all the students noticed that our hero was able to create one of the forms on the first day. Our hero watched it all and thought that he was in the center of the jewel. The teacher was as surprised as the others. She had even heard that it was Cheyenne who had astonished all the teachers in the entrance exam. Red-haired friend of Amy asked her if our hero is really such a unique. After all, not everyone can do such a thing on his first day. And our hero is pretty cute. But Amy was as if all alone. She was pale as the moon, and on her face dripped with sweat. Amy realized at that moment that it was our hero who had become the bastard who had begun all her humiliations. And looking at him now, she thought that someone had helped him, because how could such a man as our hero be so skillful? But still she understood that our hero could catch up with the difference in college incredibly fast and his influence would only grow, so the only plan that she had left was simply that she would have to get close to our hero. The teacher was also shocked, because the omnipotence of our hero was truly superb, as if he had spent his whole life training in the mountains. But our hero raised his voice, so the teacher decided to distract her mind a little. Our hero asked what to do, because the size of his zone had decreased. But the teacher said not to worry, because that is how it should be, because when the zone is reduced, the density increases. At such a density as our hero's, his form will withstand almost any physical influence, therefore he will be able to withstand magic as well. Our hero was praised by his teacher, so she asked him to leave the zone. But as soon as our hero started to understand what was going on around him, he immediately heard that many children said that he was cool. But he did not understand why everyone started to look at him so intently. So he thanked everyone for the kind words and immediately decided to go away. The teacher was also smiling, because she could recognize the shrewdness of our hero in creating the protective form, but she also understood that he was clearly helped by his convergent type and by the unusual size of his zone. So the only thing she decided to continue doing was just to keep watching Cheyenne, who was leaving incredibly embarrassed. After all, it was on our hero that countless stars were directed, expressing all kinds of feelings, and also the thirst for competition, interest and admiration, envy, but most importantly, the creepy look May. The next day another gaze was again on our hero. This time the teacher was that frightening teacher from the entrance test, Sina Oliver. Cheyenne didn't know that she was actually a 5th grade teacher. She would intentionally devote her free time to the 7th grade. While the teacher was spreading her materials on the table, she thought that Ted was an incredibly strange teacher, because they could have sent our hero to the 5th grade, and he would have caught up with the material sooner or later. So Sina Oliver has decided to take on our hero and promote him quickly. Cheyenne also noticed that Sina's eyes were fixed on him, but he decided to write it off as just imagining things for himself. She smiled and decided to recreate a spell in her hand, a small block of ice that smelled cold. She asked if anyone could explain the spell she had just used. After all, what is cold and what is freezing? The classroom became cold and the pupils began to freeze, but the teacher said that she did not have enough energy in this case, because in the world there is no such word as cold energy. So the temperature can indefinitely rise, but cannot infinitely decline. After all, the state of zero energy all magicians call absolute zero. If we take some energy at room temperature, then we can easily create ice crystals. But the teacher asked what would happen if we split it into small particles and create a convection flow. But since no one answered, she decided to show her cards, saying that they would create temperatures so low that they would be able to kill a person. But having added that it had been tested by experience, the people in the room became even more uncomfortable. But the next question followed, so how does the magician draw energy? How does he use it? So the teacher began to draw an example on the blackboard that the magician is able to control the world within his zone. On a certain territory, the magician becomes like a god, because it is the fact that the magician is able to touch light, look at the smell the touch, give the opportunity to control reality. But even with these powers, many people do not even know how to use all the powers. They may not even know what they are capable of. After all, to activate a spell you need to have abilities similar to those of God, namely omnipotence as well as omniscience. And also omniscience. It is these abilities that wizards use to activate magic, so it doesn't matter how almighty a person is, no one can do magic without knowledge. Even though wizards have incredible powers, they have to understand the structure of the world as well as scientists. Our hero understood that for this reason he could not use magic, because he had no knowledge of omniscience and only developed omnipotence. The teacher asked not to worry, because in the future all those present will study different subjects here, and the zone is only half of what magic is capable of. So if everyone does not study diligently, they will never become magicians. So it was at this point that the teacher suggested that we start the basic chemistry lecture. Our hero stood there and looked at all this, because he understood that to become a magician would be much easier for him than he had thought. Probably all classes were finished, many people were sitting in the library, many people were outside, and some people were just resting. However, it was our hero who spent every day in the library, and even so, barely catching up with the aristocrats in academic achievement. Our hero is incredibly tired from lack of sleep, but he likes studying there because he wants to fulfill his only dream. He wonders if anyone has already invented a spell that relieves your need for sleep. But at a moment his body lifted up and he felt light. How could it be? But when he looked down he realized that his body was in the air. He did not understand why it had happened so, but he immediately saw a man behind him who began to carry our hero to the woods. He landed on his ass and hurt himself, but the man in front of him had taken off his hood and the infamous Amy stood behind him. Our hero looked at her and realized that he would one day meet her, but he could not expect to meet her so soon. Our hero understood that this was indeed the same girl from 5 years ago. But Amy began to say that judging by the look on our hero's face, our hero still remembers her. Our hero couldn't understand what was going on, but Amy at once put her hand up and started to use a spell involving fire and directed it to our hero, saying that if he remembers her, she just needs to finish him off. At that moment the picture of our hero being hurt by those strange people in the alley appeared before our eyes again. Amy remembered that at that moment she wanted to let our hero go, but when our hero sobbed, she wanted to see him sob even more. But now, in the present tense, our hero has changed completely. She wondered to herself, is he the same man in front of her as he was 5 years ago? Our hero got up from his knees and said that he remembered her because she had ordered the bandits to take off his clothes. But at once Amy told him to stop, and it was not as our hero remembers, as it was a simple misunderstanding. She blushed at once and timidly said that our hero did not think that she was a pervert. Our hero was at once struck, because he could expect everything, but not this statement from such a beautiful lady. Amy at once began to say that it was not she who wanted to take off his clothes, but the bandits, and she had not ordered them to do it. But our hero went on to say that it was she who wanted to see something under his clothes. She immediately began to blush and stammer, but still said that it was she who had never been interested in guys at all, but our hero realized that she had brought him to talk about it. Amy didn't understand what she was doing, what the hell she was trying to justify herself for, but our hero understood that she was afraid that he would spread rumors about her and they were both worried about that. So our hero asked her if she just wanted to say the usual word sorry. Amy did not understand, but our hero said that he understands that Amy wants to forget that day because the best student of the advanced class, which is also popular, but now they cannot change that past. He asked if it would be easier to just apologize to make up excuses. Amy could not concentrate at that moment. She thought that our hero just wanted to use her because no one in their right mind would use words to solve everything. She thought that our hero was challenging her, but what did our hero think she was? So at that moment she smiled and asked what advantage she would get if she apologized. Our hero did not understand anything at all, so Amy asked again what would happen if she apologized. Can she be sure our hero won't betray her and that everything will stay between them? If she apologized, that would mean that she would admit her guilt. Wouldn't she then be in her own disadvantage? But our hero asks, does she think she can get anything from an apology? It's just common courtesy to someone who's been hurt. Amy laughed and asked if our hero thinks that everything is so easy in this world. Amy decided to attack as well, even though she thought that it was a fight of words. She said that there was no point in wasting strength, because she would not even get any benefit. So she said only that it would be difficult for our hero to survive in the academy if she would leave Cheyenne alone. Our hero looked at her and understood that even though she pretended to be a perfect student, her nasty nature would go nowhere. Amy was thinking at that moment how else to frighten our hero, so she asked what our hero was thinking about the scariest thing at school. Judging by the expression on our hero's face, he did not even know about it. So Amy said that the scariest thing at school are the older pupils, because if he would hurt them, then he would not stay away. All they will learn is that our hero is an ordinary peasant who breaks the school rules. Our hero has asked her, so what does she want, expulsion, or is she just afraid that he spread rumors? However, Amy decided to joke and say that first she will wait, because only after observing Cheyenne, he can earn her trust. She decided that it was the only way to find out if she could trust him. Our hero didn't understand why, but what Amy said made him think he was a special student. She said that from the looks of it, even a commoner would have a hard time getting in here, so it would be very sad if he got expelled. Our hero had agreed to such terms to become Amy's henchman, so she asked him to behave himself if he wanted to finish his studies. But if he tells the others, he will kill him with his own hands with eyes that are full of fury. Our hero thought it would be a failure from the start, so the next morning our hero, with all eyes on him, went to bring some coffee. Amy was smiling, and all her friends were burning. She did not understand what was going on. Amy immediately took the coffee from the hands of our hero, almost dropped it, and then she left. Her friend asked if she would say something in return, but she had to go to school. Our hero stood with outstretched arms, blushing, as many said, that he had most likely confessed to Amy. Amy's friend asked her what was going on, was she really his type? But Amy said she was only bringing up another youngster. But in fact she was not as calm as one could guess. She liked to humiliate our hero very much, or she just liked our hero. She thought that our hero could turn into a stereotypical junior high school boy who was unrequitedly in love with her, so that he wouldn't say anything, she wouldn't believe him. She wondered if there could be a better revenge than this, because all the experiences of 5 years have immediately evaporated, and she feels great. Our hero understood that it was bullying, and if he went along with his emotions, he would be the only one who would be at a loss. However, the fact that Amy does not believe him does not mean anything, because he gives her confidence in any way, and he will do it all perfectly. It all depends on his cleverness. So from that moment on, he began to implement his plan. Even after 10 days our hero was walking with coffee again. All the girls were delighted with him. They even started to call him the main romantic of the academy. Everyone talked about the fact that our hero went to declare his love for the 10th time in a row. Amy was very pleased, because the audience for this show was even more than the first time. She thought that since so many people were watching it, she would rather not suspect anything. She wanted to finish it quietly. But at one point her friend asked her when she would finally reciprocate her feelings. Amy immediately felt a strange heaviness because of what her friend was talking about. She asked if she was the kind of girl who was not interested in guys, but her friend said that rumors quickly spread, because in addition, she never looked even in the eyes of guys, but from our hero, she takes coffee almost every day. The whole academy is waiting for the birth of a legendary couple. Immediately Amy came to her senses and saw our hero in front of her, who had once again brought her coffee. Immediately the crowd asked Amy to take the coffee. Our hero even made a strange grin and said he had not even spilled it. But I really thought about going to the library as soon as possible. And here Amy, probably for the first time in his academic life, blushed in front of everyone. She did not understand whether our hero is mocking her. But this time Amy decided to knock over the drink and asked how many times can we bring her this drink. She asked him out loud if he thought that she had fallen in love with him because he was carrying her favorite coffee. She began to shout that Cheyenne is just a student who doesn't study at all, and that he only follows girls around. She asked him not to bring her that smooth coffee anymore, but her friend immediately solved the issue with Cheyenne so that he would understand her friend. Prodigy Amy has caught up with her and has asked what will happen if there will be unpleasant rumors about her. But Amy at this point has very much blushed and has told that nobody cares. After all, people simply have nothing to do. She knew that when the subject of the graduating class was over, everything would be over immediately. But the crowd decided to think that Amy had done wrong to our hero. Our hero was asking himself and rejoicing, because shouldn't he keep doing it? So while many people said that he had been wounded spiritually, he was truly happy with his life. That same day, in the first library sat Amy, who could not concentrate at all on her task. She did not understand how she had allowed all this to happen, because she had simply done all this so that the newcomers would not spread strange rumors. But in the end she had created them herself, and yet she thought she had finished it well before. But she didn't think it was that important to her now. It is this skill that allows her to remember her state at a particular moment. She decided to go back to the very first day our hero had brought her coffee. She thought he looked very funny. But every day after that his eyes didn't change and his pupils didn't even move. She did not understand what that meant, because no matter how much a person wanted to hide his feelings, the look still gave it away. And since it can be controlled by the autonomic nervous system, if Cheyenne is able to monitor the eyes, he either controls his emotions or just absolutely sincere. In the evening, while studying with her friend asked Amy if she was going out because it was already evening. She asked if she could go to dinner with her, but Amy refused. Her friend had noticed her friend's uneasiness, so she asked if it was because she had not taken coffee from our hero. Amy tried to deny it, but she was persistent. She asked her to be honest, but she just went away again. Amy was very tired. She understood that everything did not go according to plan, so her mind was a mess. She went out the door, but noticed a guy she knew who was obviously waiting for her. It was a Jake Ardius. She asked him why he had waited for her if he could not be so bored. But he asked her to be less rude, for he had heard rumors that Sharon was attracted to her. She asked him if he had come to make fun of her, but at that moment he said he had not, for he had brought much better coffee than the one our hero had brought. He said it was the coffee that magnificent Amy deserved. She had no idea what Jake was doing, so he explained that he was the heir apparent to the royal marshal's court, unlike that bastard. But Amy said she was not amused by jokes like his. She asked if they had such a good relationship for such a conversation. But even Amy knows that Drake's company would be ready to humiliate her at any moment. Drake at the same moment stood in her way and told her that this attitude towards him was the same as that towards his family. He could not allow to dishonor his family, even to such a person from the family of Carmies. But Amy called him a miserable bastard. She asked him if he was too conceited because of what he knew. He's just a buffoon who's a disgrace to his family and he ought to know it. He was the loser who had created the strange company that secretly poisoned other people. But all these words made Drake very angry. He asked her if she knew someone who had power over her family. He told her not to pretend to be a nice girl, because his family could just bankrupt the Carmies family. At that moment, Amy realized that she was facing a man who had an unbelievable amount of anger inside of him. And she added that, unlike our hero, he had eyes like a rotten fish. He asked her if she thinks he is much worse than our hero, so if so, he will do things differently. He'll make it so that our hero just can't use magic. But he couldn't even finish because Amy knocked the coffee mug out of his hands. He wanted to call her names, but he saw that the atmosphere began to heat up because a target form had formed underneath her. She became so terrified and asked him what he was going to do, but Drake was too frightened to answer, for he could not believe that anyone could change his shape so quickly. He asked if she knew not to use magic at school, but Amy began to say that our hero was one who relied only on himself, not his family. She knows that such a worthless person standing in front of her is sure to do nothing, even having such a pretty face. Drake knew that if he entered her zone, she was sure to set him on fire because he is much weaker than her, so he just decided to run away and get revenge another time. Amy, on the other hand, rolled over on the wall behind her and didn't understand, so what had she just done? For what reason? Was it because she was scared, or was she afraid he would find out her secret? Before her eyes flashed the words of our hero that he would still earn her trust, and immediately she was afraid, looking at the spilled coffee, that our hero would stop coming to her. But nevertheless her mind was definitely clear. A couple of days later a small commotion that Amy had made turned into chaos because a friend of Amy's told our hero that using him, she was forced to come to the gym. This message was from the dark magician. Our hero had thought before this incident that it was over quickly when he walked around with his head down. He thought that she would continue to bully him, but can we consider his doubts to be gone? But he saw that Sariel, a friend of Amy's, was standing there without her. He thought something was wrong, so he went over to her. He went up to her, but she had begun to scream a lot, which made our hero scream too. She asked him where Amy was, but our hero had no idea what was going on, so she gave him a letter that said Amy had to come to the 14th hall at 6 p.m. or our hero would be castrated. This letter was not to be shown to the teachers, or she would regret it for the rest of her life. Our hero asked, who was the dark magician who had sent the letter? Half an hour ago, before this situation, Amy had been hurt by a guy. She asked him how dare he communicate with her, but he asked her to be polite and handed her the letter. He said that his boss wanted to see her. She asked him to ignore him, but when he said that Amy's boyfriend would be killed if he didn't, she immediately shook. She read the letter and realized it was Jake. Carl also read the letter and wondered who the dark magician was, if it wasn't just the usual bunch of bad guys. Is it the same bullies who bully the good students? But why did they kidnap Sharon? Does it have something to do with Amy? Amy realized that it was probably because of the incident when she fought back, so Carrie suggested telling everything to the teachers because she and Chiron could be in danger. She thought that it could be done, but if it happened that way, then the council of professors could start a showdown and she would have to tell them about her relationship with Sharon. If it came to that, they would all understand that our hero was an ordinary peasant. She realized that she had done too much wrong to our hero, so she told Cyril that she would go alone, and if she was not back by 7 o'clock, she could tell her parents everything. Cyril screamed that she could not go alone against a mob of enemies, but Amy had her reasons and asked not to worry, because even if there were 10 bastards like Jake, they would be nothing against her. Our hero who read the letter was in a very strange mood, because he didn't believe that she would go to save him. He even thought that she was not so bad, so he asked Sariel where she was. She said that she had her reasons, but that it was the first time she had asked that, and also asked to wait until 7 because only then could the teachers. Our hero understood that it was an unexpected situation, but they still had an hour to spare. And the reason why Amy did not want to tell the teachers was to keep their secrets. They are interconnected, so it made our hero think that she did it to keep his secret too. He gave his bag to Samuel and told her to wait until the appointed time and he would leave on his own. He wanted to run away, but she had to catch him and carry him. She said that if our hero ran away, he would not make it. She also said that they will be transported there by photons, so she asked them to hold on tight. At that moment they were covered by a yellow glow, and immediately they were transported to the forest at great speed. Upon landing, our hero threw up, but Sariel continued to run towards the training ground. She looked and saw that no one was there. Was it because they were 10 minutes early? But our hero said that they were probably in another place because they could have taken into consideration telling the teachers. But our hero realized that Amy would definitely be here. He realized that the mystery of his past did not matter now because Amy would be in more danger than they were, so he asked Sariel to send and tell his parents she would get there faster than he would. Sariel said that Amy had asked him to wait for her, but our hero said that he was the cause so that nothing would happen if he helped. Sariel was a little confused, but for a moment she was stuck in her head and could not understand if our hero was really the important reason. Could it be that her friend and Sharon had been dating for a long time, but he had never known about it? But our hero said that it was not the time for such a talk, because now the situation was becoming more and more dangerous. Our hero decided, left alone, to use the zone. He knew that he could use it 100% in the mountains, so he wanted to find at least one clue. At that moment he noticed the footprints of 2 people that had been left behind not long ago, but halfway through. But what was that sound in front of him? However, at this time further into the woods there was a battle going on between Amy and that very Hap. 4 more people came. They were surprised that Amy had come to them, just as their boss had said. But Jake said they should be more careful with important guests like Amy. Amy didn't like it. She thought there were too many kids who had nothing better to do, and Jake was joking about it because did she really come alone? Did she really value Sharon enough to come alone? But Amy said there was no need to set the whole house on fire to catch the rats. These words hurt Jake, because she did not think Amy would be so faithful, but this time he had a plan, so Amy asked where our hero was. But there was laughter, which made it clear that our hero probably wasn't there at all. They were making fun of Sharon, for he would probably have continued to sit at his books as he had done all along. But Amy laughed and said that since Sharon was gone, it would be easy for her to get rid of them all. At this point Jake couldn't believe it, for wasn't she really going to attack them? But the fire that flew from all sides and set everyone on fire made it clear that Amy was not ready to accept such a dinner. Jake said that the target's form was weak, so they would just have to move fast and hold their ground. But Amy was hitting them anyway. Who would let them dodge their attacks? She is the girl who knows how to use target form without flaws. She thought that what we are doing now is very different from what she did in the training room, as she really had experience in real battles. But Jake was sure that no matter how good the technique was, there would always be a weak spot. He decided to use a vertical attack and throw the wind blade at her. He thought he had it, but Amy dodged the attack and said it was a scheme. She immediately counterattacked and launched a fiery attack right at Jake. He called Amy a mad steer and told her he had such shitty grades that he was wasting his time with stupid things. Jake pointed his hand at her and told her that she would pay. But Zia-Chamai was sure that his taunts were useless and she would not let him go so easily. But the spell Jake had used immediately struck a chord in her eye. She did not understand what was happening because she felt unbearable pain. But all the people who surrounded her laughed because they managed to catch her. They thought she would go crazy if she didn't clear her zone, because right now she was under the anti-magic. Amy did not understand how such a jerk could use the forbidden magic on her. Amy understood that she was in a very bad situation, because she could not even recover with her red eyes. Then Amy was lifted into the air and bound with wind vapor. Jake immediately asked her if she was going to take him up on his offer yesterday. After all, it was in her best interest to answer correctly. After all, it was Jake who was very interested in doing something with her. But Amy was nervous because she couldn't do anything. Her circuitry also failed because she had stopped training after 12 years. She thought for sure there was a way out, but Jake kept saying that she didn't realize how badly she was doing, and that basically all guys were clingy. But he said he would only have to fix her face and then no one would chase her. He put his dagger right up to her face. Amy had her eyes closed. She was ready for something awful to happen. Because her strength was deserting her, she understood how our hero felt when he was held. But then our hero appeared and told everyone to stop. He was even holding a stick in his hand. Jake couldn't understand who this guy was. But even though Amy saw him, Jake laughed. Our hero was alone. They even laughed that he looked like a prince who came to fight with a stick. Amy shouted at him that he was an idiot, But our hero was sure that even if there were more of them, it was impossible to suppose that they could defeat the best pupil of his academy so easily. However, our hero's task at that moment was to extend as much time as possible, because he was able to defeat Ryan in a duel, so he can cope here as well. He immediately pointed his stick at the boys and told them to leave, but Jake didn't want to do that. At that moment our hero ran to them, but at that very moment the boys used anti-magic. That turned off our hero. They started laughing because they expected our hero to drown. They knew that he would not do anything with that stick. And Amy shouted that our hero had to get out of the zone because it was anti-magic. She shouted that if our hero did not stop, he could lose his magic and go crazy. The consciousness of our hero was blurring with every second. It seemed to him that it was splitting into pieces. But at one moment the words of his teacher came to his mind. She said that wizards just need to concentrate. Our hero understood that it was his form of protection that could protect him. After all, anti-magic and zone are waves, so if he could increase his density so much that they couldn't get inside, then he would succeed. All the guys immediately started noticing that our hero is trying to resist it. But they didn't believe in our hero, they just started increasing the power, but Amy started shouting even harder so that he would just give up. But at that moment our hero succeeded. But he didn't want to stop there, he wanted more and more facets for his form. At that moment Jake began to realize that all waves of anti-magic reflect in them, so he asked everyone to concentrate, because excitement of his guys would not let our hero win. But our hero began his attack on them, so anti-magic began to hit all the enemies in the radius of his zone. All began to fall in pain, so only Amy did not understand what was going on. Could it be that she could not enter the zone, or something else? However, she realized that there was no more anti-magic, but our hero fascinated her even more. She could not believe or even think that there was such a cold and solid zone. Our hero at this moment felt every stirring under his feet as if he had stepped on a tiny worm. And at that moment Jake, who was leaning against the oak tree, could not believe what our hero had done at that moment. He could not understand how they, 6 people, could lose to our hero. They even thought that our hero specializes in anti-magic, because that was the reason why he was able to enter the school on special recommendation. At that moment Jake seemed not to be himself. He raised his voice to our hero and asked if Cheyenne thought that he could beat him in a magic duel. He was thinking that it was a piece of cake, because he didn't know how to use magic, but he couldn't use anything, because he got hit in the face by Amy and flew away. However, Amy was not finished at this point, because she attacked him and continued to hit him. Our hero tried to calm her down, but she could not stop, so our hero even picked her up and tried to pull her away. He pulled her, but she fainted instantly, and he felt a little uncomfortable because Amy was lying there unconscious. Our hero could only assume that she had not fainted, but had simply fainted from exhaustion. But after our hero had said thank you, Amy immediately woke up. She was a little embarrassed, so she asked how our hero got into a fight. So she advised him to leave, because if they had been caught by the teacher, they would have surely died. But our hero said that Carl should have been there by now, because he asked her to tell her parents, even though Amy had forbidden it. But Amy immediately pressed her hand to her head and said that it would be hard for them if the academy got involved, and our hero does not know how things work here. All wizards will want to know the exact causes of what happened, because they never let things slide. She started to shout and asked our hero if he wanted their secret to be known. But our hero said that it was not the most important, because they had almost died. Jake was not in a dream and heard everything. He understood that our hero and Amy had a secret, but Amy asked our hero to leave as soon as possible. But not in time, because the teacher was already on his way. Amy prayed to fate that it was the same old teacher who looks at everything through her fingers. But it was her teacher, Ted, and Sina. She realized that they were the most irascible teachers in the whole school. Sariel was also with them, and immediately ran to Amy. She was worried about her, but her teacher, Ted, had used a rather complicated spell and immediately saw the children lying on the floor. He couldn't understand what had happened. He ran to Amy and asked how she could be in that situation. But Sina's teacher came to Cheyenne and told him that they had arrived as soon as they knew, so what had happened. But Jake asked to explain the whole situation. He said that he had asked for a duel out of personal animosity, as it often happens with people their age. But Sina asked if it was really a duel, because she had been told that there had been a threatening letter and that many of them used anti-magic. She asked if Jake even knew the school rules. But Jake tried to tell her that Amy was too strong, so they had decided to use anti-magic against her. He asked her to look closely since they were the ones who had been hurt the most. He also said that Amy had broken the rules by attacking him outside the library first, so that was why he had asked for a duel and was angry. He asked if he thought it was strange that she hadn't told the teachers right away. Amy immediately objected, saying that he had threatened her, and then wrote that he was going to kidnap Cheyenne. But Jake asked if it was true because they hadn't even attacked her first and Cheyenne hadn't been kidnapped at all. It was Cheyenne, instead of calling the teachers, who rushed to them, so it was our hero and Amy who were hiding something. He announced that our heroes were the culprits, so Jake demanded the truth. He was pleased with himself because he thought that he, as a dark wizard, was too strong. He also thought that he was going to make a big deal out of this situation, and it did not matter what it cost. So after he had unearthed their secret, all the local newspapers, national agencies, even the church would know about it. He will spread it everywhere, but Cena asked to spread nonsense because it was him who used anti-magic with his cronies and also broke the rules for using it in the form of an attack. They clearly knew that Amy's mind, or our heroes, could be damaged and they would probably lose their lives, so she thought that would be enough of an exception. But Jake laughed and asked if she knew who he was. He was the one who couldn't be expelled by any teacher. Ted started to talk and stopped her, saying that his family was a lifeline, but Cena stopped him and asked if it was the teacher's job to stop all threats to the students. So Cena said that even if he could limit the sponsorship of their academy, she would still be better off without him. Jake yelled, saying that he would eventually see who would be kicked out, him or them. The world was all about money, he thought. Everyone would bow down to them. The only thing they have to do is to see for themselves. But Cena was too angry at the time, so she decided to teach him something before she kicked him out. She activated a spell on him, and he was so scared he started screaming that she shouldn't kill the students. At that moment he was enveloped by a block of ice, inside of which there were spikes. Our hero was surprised that nothing touched him, not even his clothes. He was surprised that the teacher could control even the smallest details of the spell. He realized that this is why they call her a genius of ice magic. She was standing over him at that moment, asking him if he really thought that Jake could just get to the top just by throwing money around. But he was just asking her to put him down. But then Cena took away the spell and said that she knew that he had already harmed many other students, but the academy overlooked it, not punishing him for his actions. He shouted that it was because his family had too much money, but at that moment Cena also asked him not to make mistakes because the academy is not a place where you learn for money. On the contrary, they teach you things you cannot buy. He asked what it was, but she was ready to answer immediately that it was their dream. She said they were teaching them how to become a wizard. At that moment a memory came to Jake's mind, when he first came to his teacher Cena, how he shared his dream with the other students, how they wanted to become magicians. Wasn't that what this journey was all about? But now Jake wants to destroy with his own hands the precious memories of this place. Jake immediately bowed his head, for he realized what he had done and said he was sorry. After all, it was their dream that was most precious to all. After this incident, Jake and other magicians have repented and again wish to become wizards, but it will happen much later, so now their wounds will simply be treated and they will pay for their offenses in the chamber of punishment. After all, the inevitable did happen after all. Our hero and Amy were sitting in the counseling room. They were asked why they had not informed everyone about the situation before. After all, they should all understand that the first thing they should do is run and tell the teachers. However, instead, our hero went to save the skillful high school girl alone. The teachers demanded a good reason for this action. Amy decided to tell everything, and our hero understood that it just could not hide forever. He may not know to whom the principal had disclosed his secret, the origin of our hero. However, Amy said that our hero is her boyfriend, which immediately surprised all the teachers, as well as Amy's friend, Sariel. At this point we see how Sariel understood everything. She talked about what Amy was asking for at that moment, screaming for help. But all the villains thought that no one would come to help. But at that moment, on a white horse, Cheyenne rode up and knocked down all the enemies with a single blow of his foot. He turned to Amy and said he was ready to go to the end of the world for her. He took her by the arms and put them in his arms, because how a lady can move after this, and then even almost kissed her. All girls shouted with delight, because Carl assured that she had seen everything with her own eyes. But at that moment Amy came up behind her and asked her what kind of rumors she was spreading. The whole school shouted and wrote about our hero's new relationship with Amy. But Amy asked her friend not to spread rumors, because it was not so. But she was so surprised and happy with this turn, because the only thing she should know is that our hero and her best friend may meet. She even thought that at least they had kissed. And in the end Amy herself should be happy, because everything turned out and now she will not be pestered by annoying guys. However, Amy that day was questioned by the teachers. They asked if it was true, because she had never been interested in a guy since she got to the academy. However, Amy said that she had seen Cheyenne before she was at the academy and they were younger, so it seemed like fate to meet within the walls of such a magical academy. She looked at Cheyenne with a very strange look that made her break out in a sweat. She tapped his foot under the table to make him understand her hint, so that he immediately confirmed what she had said. Teachers have decided to accept this version, because if so, it is clear why our hero rushed to save Amy. Amy understood that it would be better than to expose her and Cheyenne's past. Amy sat brooding all the time, but Sariel even shouted at dinner because she had thought so from the beginning. She even said that today was the class together so that she could see Cheyenne. She went into the hall and immediately began to pelt her friend with questions. Will she go to meet her after the bunks, or maybe have dinner together, or even a date in the library? However, Amy laughed, of course, pretending, and also said that they want to focus on their studies, as students are supposed to. But that didn't exactly solve the problem, because she was the one who wanted the show and she thought it was incredibly boring. Amy thought that he had too much to do, so there was not even time to play fake love with Shiren. Yes, and understood that our hero should have a quiet school life. She even dared to think and smiled a little that our hero was doing well, but at the same moment decided to stop herself and assure that she did not like it even a little bit. At the second training ground, she called our hero and immediately asked him how was his day and did he miss Amy. But our hero was embarrassed and asked not to do so because of some nonsense. But Amy did not even like it, because that is what she said. She understood that they were pretending to be a couple, but it seemed to her that our hero drew a line between them. She could not understand how they could do this to her. So at that very moment she went up to our hero and told him that he could talk in private because they were much closer than just acquaintances, high school and junior high school. Cartel was just floating with happiness. She heard such words from her friend for the first time in her life. She thought, is this really called love? Or rather the power of love? Amy said that they were in a relationship, but our hero decided to stand on his own, saying that she was still the eldest, so he would go to his group. Our hero had understood that all this would not be good, because everybody said it was very nice and they really wanted to show everything off. Others say that our hero got into the academy only because of his face, and he spends all his time on dates instead of studying. So that is why pupils guessed why our hero cannot use magic yet. Our hero was shaking a lot, because 2 days ago, rumors began to spread that Amy have met our hero. Many cried that they could not get hold of Amy, while others were jealous of the fact that he had attracted attention. However, one of the people decided to stand against our hero, saying that our hero is very strange. He was the last one in the midterm. He was the last in his class and had 30 points in all subjects. No one could believe it, so they asked what it all meant. Pupils understood at once that our hero had been admitted under special conditions. He had just got in because a certain family had told him that he was a genius. After all, our hero just wanted one thing, to get a girl from a famous family. Thereupon there was a rebellion, which said that it was unfair to the son from a rich family to enter the academy, although he did not lift a spoon. Yes, and besides I just started to meet with one of the girls. Everyone shouted that all this is very suspicious because it is our hero who does not work as harmful as they do. He said that there is no forgiveness for our hero. Why does the whole academy turn a blind eye to this? But as soon as our hero entered the classroom, everything calmed down. But our hero is sure there was too much noise before he arrived. He tried to ask a boy what they were having in the next class, but he immediately turned away and left. Our hero firmly realized that he did not need to ask the reason, for they were talking so loudly that even he could hear them. Yes, and Amy might be hurt because of him. Presently everyone was gathered in the training room. There was practice for every class there. Even when our hero was practicing in that hall, he kept listening to all the conversations. His zone was too big, or our hero was bothering everyone. When the teacher came to ask how our hero was doing, then our hero said that the form of evasion was difficult because when he was trying to separate the zone from his body, it seemed to him that his consciousness was flying away with him. The teacher said that it should be so because our hero has a convergent type that follows his nature, which causes his mind to gather in the form of a sphere. Though this type is not very well combined with the form of dodging, because it requires a lot of manipulations. But the teacher asked us how our hero could deal with other forms. But our hero answered that he achieves everything with them without any problem. The teacher immediately said that this is very good, so he asked him to demonstrate his skills in a visible area. However, our hero could not believe it. Should he do it right now? Right then, while too many horny people were looking at him. But she said that if our hero is not in the mood today, then we can do it some other time, because our hero is the only 7th grader who can do all 4 shapes, so she wants to see it. The teacher was afraid that our hero was afraid of the reaction of other students, although on the first day he could, and he wanted to use the visible zone. She understood that everyone at his age is sensitive enough, but he who knows his own worth should be unwavering. So at that very moment our hero had the courage to show what he could do and asked his teacher to evaluate it. The students immediately saw our hero trying to do it again. They thought that our hero just wanted to look good in Amy's eyes, because that's the only thing he is good at. The teacher stood behind the pulpit and asked our hero to show all 4 forms one by one. Our hero understood that the ability to change the form, one of the conditions, so he can go to the next class. So if he manages to advance at least a little, he will be able to stay away from the 7th class and change his position. First he created a form of protection, which as Amy had noticed was starting to look a lot stronger. Everyone understood that the form in the 144 facet was top class, you could even call it armor. The target form was also good. The teacher understood that our hero knew the basics perfectly and could change forms faster than a 5th grader, so that there would be no problem with the transition to the next class. The next form was a form of dodging, but our hero had no success with it, so he did not want to show his failure to everyone. But nevertheless, for the sake of the teacher's instruction, he needed to show his failure. Everyone started to watch our hero trying to change into an evasive form. All 5th graders were watching him carefully. He understood that the key point was that he had to move to the center of his zone before it shrank and disappeared. He tried to adjust it as he had done during the practice. When our hero had become distracted, he wanted to try again, but he had noticed all the glances that made a mockery of him in his mind. Amy wondered what was going on with our hero. He was good at it, but even the cartel had noticed that our hero's zone was wavering, probably because of all the attention. But our hero wondered why people enjoy other people's failures. But he asked a different question: why do they all want him to fail? But he realized he knew it. But at that moment a voice told him to stop thinking about bullshit. At that moment our hero came to his senses and realized that it was he who had come to this school to become a magician. He knew that he was not allowed to think about anything else but to concentrate. Immediately his zone began to change. Everyone watched it with horror, but our hero wondered if it would separate from him. Or will it just disappear? We do not see what happened next, because the same teacher who came to the aid of the pupils is sitting in front of us. She reads the report and sees that our hero was able to resist the anti-magic through a normal form of protection. She understood that she was so dangerous that even specialists need an artifact as a mediator. It is as dangerous as it is complex, and even the fact that they didn't use anti-magic properly can't make her understand how our hero could defeat 6 people. It could mean that Cheyenne has a lot more mental power than those students combined. But is it an innate talent? However, at that moment Cheyenne was visited by the same teacher who taught our hero the use of forms. She came and said that our hero had successfully used the evasion form. She said that he had done it yesterday even though it had only been 1 month since he had begun to learn it. Thanks to the visible zone, she was also able to see what she held for about 4 seconds. Sina was pleased because she had expected that. Also, the teacher decided to offer something special for the students to increase their motivation to learn. Sina was thinking the same thing with the teacher, so a few days later in chemistry class, she ended her class early to make an important announcement. She asked Cheyenne to stand up from his seat and told him that he would be transferred to 5th grade. He would be joining him tomorrow, so she asked him to remember his schedule. Everyone immediately jumped out of their seats because they didn't think that our hero could skip 2 classes at once. They just couldn't understand what kind of influence his family had on the school. The teacher was about to leave, but one of the girls objected, saying that it was very rare to skip 2 classes. After all, how can a student who does not know how to use magic be transferred early? Sina was also shocked, because how is it possible that our hero cannot use spells? She asked Cheyenne if it was true. Images of his classmates appeared in front of our hero again, waiting for our hero to fail. He said that it was all true, but Sina was also a little shocked, saying that even simple magic can be learned purely out of curiosity. But Sina said that there is no obstacle for transferring, because in the 6th grade magic is not graded. But another pupil had risen from his seat and said that this was discrimination. He asked his teacher if she hadn't told him that the zone is not all magic, so what is our hero good at? He could take it if our hero could cast any spells at all. This nasty boy was immediately joined by the rest of the class, who said that even they could overtake him. And if he gets transferred, they will announce it to the student council. At that moment, Sina realized that behind the whole situation there was something serious that she had not really suspected. She said that she had been too hasty, so she would discuss it, and the final decision would be announced after the official assembly of teachers. That vile classmate was incredibly happy because he had got his way, but Sina, who was sitting in her office, remembered that all the students were in an incredible rage. She did not even think that such an objection was common. There were some personal conflicts involved. At that moment, the same girl who had said nothing against our hero came up to Sina's teacher. She decided to tell Sina something about what had happened earlier, so the girl said that it all started about a week ago. At first the students started to ignore Cheyenne, but now they have started to spread rumors about him and also interfere with his studies. She knows who started gossiping and inciting others. Tears came to her eyes. She knew that there was nothing worse than gossip. It was even very cowardly. Sina understood what was going on when she looked at her pupil. She said thank you to her pupil, whose name was Maria, and said that she would take care of everything herself. At this moment, our hero remembered the words from the conversation of great scientists which contained the words of a physicist. Physicist Torkelin said that a man should have 6 hours for sleep, although he gave only 4 hours. But another person asked him if his conclusions are not considered erroneous because he became a great scientist in spite of the lack of sleep. But he said that teenagers were superhumans, so whether they slept or not was not a problem for them. Our hero looked at the time and realized that it was quite late, so it was time to get ready from the library. While our hero was walking under the moon, he remembered the words of Thumarn that once he gets to the academy, there will be a lot of bad looks at him, but he will have to endure and go on. If only our hero can endure, then he will reach his goal. Our hero understood and decided that he could endure everything, because there were too many people who believed in him. So whoever stood in our hero's way, he would become a magician. When he came to his room, there was a knock on his door. He could not understand who could bring him on such a night. Could it be the same children? But at that moment the teacher Sina appeared at the door. Our hero could not expect her, so he offered her tea. But Sina refused because she wanted to talk to him, but he was not in the room when she came in. She also apologized for coming so late. She looked at our hero's desk and understood why. When she first looked at Shiren's marks, she noticed that the number of marks in all subjects was equal. She understood that our hero is trying to improve his knowledge in all subjects at once, because our hero is studying not for the immediate results, but for the sake of his future. It's not that he can't even learn magic, it's just that Shiren purposely avoids studying it. But she asked herself, why did he do it now? Why didn't our hero have a proper education when he was younger? At that moment our hero was a little bit confused, but Sina noticed that he didn't look at her like in the class, he was more attentive there, he didn't even look away. Our hero had already answered this question, because as we know, our hero has difficulties, but he likes to be in such a wonderful place very much. Sina also got down to business. She asked if our hero is really being bullied. But Shiren answered that everything was fine and that nobody had to worry. But Sina asked him to be more honest, because it's not something one should hide from teachers like her. But he could not do anything about their attitudes either. Sina was surprised. How is it possible that our hero is not offended by his classmates? But our hero also understood that he is not unfeeling, but he just can't force them to be his friends. He was sure that he would stay true to himself and would not dwell on it. And if you think about it, everyone in his 7th grade class would think he was wrong, and that's just the opinion of 40 people. He believes there is someone in the world who can understand him. Sina smiled and said that she understood Shiren, so she would take that into consideration at the teachers' meeting. At this moment, Sina's thoughts moved from that moment in the room and were immediately announced at the teachers' meeting. She said that our hero wanted to transfer early. At that moment, all the teachers were shocked because they could not understand that the whole class was making fun of one student. But then they remembered that mostly in the younger classes there are children who have no talent and skills, so it is clear why everyone does not like our hero. So with all the facts they knew, they were dealing with discrimination in the class. However, they should still agree with Shiren's translation. They even said that our hero could graduate in the next 4 years, so the more young graduates the better. However, teacher Ted stood up this time too, which immediately knocked Sina's legs out. The principal asked him what was the matter, that he didn't want to have him transferred. Ted told him that he knew he was talented, but that the problem was that he didn't know how to use magic. He didn't think it was a good idea to ignore the negative reactions of the other students. But Sina immediately interrupted him, saying that as she had mentioned earlier, Shiren was putting magic aside and aiming to gain more knowledge. It is the teacher who must not interfere with the student's education plan. But Ted interrupted her again, saying that he was not talking about Shiren's methods, and Shiren has too great a predilection for Shiren. Sina could not accept this fact, so Ted continued by saying that probably the other students are weaker than Shiren because our hero is more into omnipotence. But he's stronger in the institution. It is this decision can negatively affect the students and reduce their motivation to learn. He smiled and asked, is it good to invest in only one student genius? Sina was angry because Ted wanted to ruin such a talented student. All the teachers knew that the same show between Ted and Sina was about to begin again, and they had their hands in their faces. They were surprised that they had become wizards at all with such characters. But the headmaster said that enough was enough because it could just be solved peacefully. He said that both teachers are right, but Sina thinks logically, but Professor Ted's words also make sense because he is concerned about the balance among the students out of love for the academy. It's the principal who understands everything. You can't give preference to students. Ted already thought that he had won and Sina was sad. But the cheerful face of the headmaster let everyone know that he had thought of something. The next morning, on the bulletin board of the high-level classes, they were shocked because on the board was an announcement that all 7th graders would be allowed to be promoted to the next grade. The main criterion would be magic teleportation. However, they thought that teleportation was too difficult an ability, so they were a little afraid. At that time our hero came to the board and realized that from that moment he would try to pass to the next class. So it was the so-called intimidation of the 7th grade loner became widely known even among the older students. After the class at the bulletin board, everyone knew what was going to happen. It was all because of our hero. But Amy, who was able to hear everything, understood that our hero had been bullied because of her. That's why he avoided her, so she wouldn't get involved. Carl, on the other hand, started to think like Sherlock. She knew that the 7th grade students were very immature, so that's why they dragged our hero into it. It could have happened to her too, but she had time to transfer. At that moment Amy went somewhere. Carl shouted at her to ask where she was going. She only said that she was going to hit him hard. How dare our hero keep quiet about such a thing? And on top of that, she's gathering everyone from the 7th grade. She asked her not to do it, but Amy asked her if she really wanted the man she loved to become an outcast. Sariel said she would hurt his pride even more. But Amy didn't care. Our hero probably doesn't like her, but why would he choose to hide it? She was talking about that teleportation, so it shook Amy to think that this teleportation is too complicated and moreover just very dangerous for those who have not studied magic until this moment. Cariel had suggested that Amy teach our hero the magic of teleportation, but as usual she did not have enough time for exams, and even if he could not learn it, he was not worthy to be her boyfriend. However, in the evening, Amy was flying around the turrets to get to the room of our hero. She assured herself that she was not doing it for him, but just because she had something to do with it. But first she wanted our hero to beg for her forgiveness. Immediately she flew into the window of our hero and gagged him so he wouldn't scream. She said she was the one who would kick his ass, but at that moment she noticed our hero's teacher Sina sitting in his room. She asked Amy if that's how they see each other. Does Amy sneak into his dorm room every night? But then Amy blushed and said that it is not so, because it is a misunderstanding. Sina said she understood why Cheyenne and Amy were so quiet and didn't even see each other that often, but Amy went on to say that this was the first time she had ever done this. And it was Cheyenne who told her that they should not meet at school, but she asked herself, what is the teacher doing in his room at night? Sina said that she had come to give some advice for the exam, because the situation in the class was rather difficult. Our hero did not waste any time and handed the tea to Amy, which was very pleasant to her nose. However, she immediately began to shout at him, because why the hell he allows himself to humiliate? And why did he not tell her about it in the first place? But Sina immediately offered to sit down and discuss everything, because the exam is more important. Our hero was sitting and could not understand what was going on, because his girlfriend and teacher were sitting beside him. Amy asked him if it was not dangerous to practice teleportation, because our hero had never learned magic. But Sina said that it was the principal's decision, and she was a little worried for everyone too. But that decision was not made without a reason. Amy did not understand how such things can be a joke for the director, and our hero at this time asked if it is all very dangerous. But Amy asked, does our hero know that teleportation uses the attribute of light? If so, he must understand that light has absolute speed, so that no matter in the world can surpass it. The teleportation spell uses this speed to overcome the boundaries of space and time. Our hero listened to everything and asked if it was really possible to turn a body into light. But Sina said that even if it seems crazy, teleportation can be mastered even by a beginner. And according to the theory that the teacher explained, the speed of light is divided into 4 categories. She explained that in order to teleportation one needs and will need the magic of light. However, it is because of this that the mass of the body is greatly reduced. Our hero understood that because his body would become lighter there would be a danger of collision. The teacher praised our hero because he always catches everything on the fly. But Amy was jealous because how come Cheyenne and the teacher so easily bonded? Has she always been so friendly? And at this point our hero asked, how do teachers want to conduct such a dangerous exam? But Amy decided to interrupt her teacher to point out that she was not so useless and our hero could ask her anything he wanted. She said that the teacher would just prepare the place without any obstacles. Our hero had asked if there was such a place, but Amy immediately pointed upwards, which made it clear that their training ground would be the mountains. And the teacher said that they would compete on the speed of moving from one mountain top to another. Our hero immediately laughed madly and quietly, because now there will be no obstacles, but one can fall from there and lose his life. Amy asked, while our hero was going crazy, who would win in this exam? He who would cross the finish line first. But Amy said that was the case, and even if no one crosses it, the one who counts the longest distance will be chosen. But of course the first level of difficulty of the training ground will be set so that the necessary measures are taken to avoid danger. But teachers are only worried about the students because if their thirst for victory will reach the limit, then all will attack each other. So Amy realized that Cheyenne would become a target for the other boys. Cheyenne, meanwhile, wondered if he could do it at all. After all, he doesn't care much about the difficulty of the exam, but he doesn't want to face the whole class alone. And he does not like the fact that someone could be injured, so is it right to agree to it. But Sina had interrupted our hero's thinking by saying that she had wanted him in the 5th grade from the beginning, but apparently her greed had only made things worse. Our hero immediately began to say that it was not so, and said that from now on she would teach him personally. But then Amy got nervous and asked why the teacher was going so far. But Sina did not see anything wrong in it. In fact, she just felt guilty for the unreasonable complexity of the upcoming exam and plans to do everything in her power. However, at this moment Amy has lit up and has told that it will be only worse, after all, considering how important this exam is. After all, if even one person finds out that Shiren is Shiren's trainer, his chances of winning will immediately disappear. So Amy will take over Shiren's training. If the difficulty is set to the first level, she is the ideal person to train him. Our hero and Sina were shocked, because how come she is not mad at him anymore? But Sina said that she even remembers that she wanted to pass the exam beforehand, so does she have time to train with our hero? Our hero was surprised, because if you think about it, the graduating class is the time when almost every pupil can envy you. It is precisely such students who are recommended as professional magicians. Their level is also considered sub-professional, and considering that they study in a respected institution, they get written about them in the magazine of the Royal Academy of Magic. However, once you cross the threshold of the class, then you can forget about the idle life, because all that awaits you, it's endless competition and a hell of a lot of training. From the very beginning, Amy just wanted to get there before all the students at the academy. But our hero immediately began to pester her, which caused her cheeks to flush red in the face. He asked if it was too early for their age. However, Amy said that it was because of him, because he is so fast progress that she can escape from him only at graduation. Our hero is like looking at the most beautiful creature in the world. He thought that Amy is so cool that she just need to be first among the high-level classes, and Amy does not care about the subsequent tests, and she has the courage to go to them. He is surprised, however, because at such an important time in her life, she still came to help Shiren. He watched her and her teacher having a nice talk and Amy showing him that she wanted to help. Sina, however, continued to insist. She said that it would be Shiren's first time learning magic, so it would be best if it was a teacher who would teach him. But Amy didn't want to lose, she was the one who wanted to do it. So she immediately went to Shiren and told him to choose who would teach him magic. Our hero was shocked because it was a very strange choice. But Amy kept asking, was it she or Master? However, in spite of everyone's surprise, our hero said that he would do everything himself. It made a huge noise. And Amy asked him if he realized what a huge life he had been given. But our hero said that he did it because he does not want to be a burden. And they all have a very important test, and the teacher will be among the examiners. And Amy again began to say that all will hire expensive tutors to master a spell, and in addition all will be set against him, and he wants to learn everything himself. But our hero said that he understood everything. After all, one of the reasons why Amy wants to go to high school before the deadline, so that she simply cannot sit back, knowing what prospects await her ahead. However, Shiren said that for him, 5th grade was a step towards becoming a wizard, just like it was for Amy. So Shiren asked her to have faith in him, because he couldn't say for sure that he would. But the only thing he wants to do now is to do everything he can not to regret his own decision. Sina smiled, and said that if that was her apprentice's wish, then so be it. However, she asked him to come at any time if he had any questions. Yes, and the teacher, as he walked out the door, asked to finish his conversation with Amy and to stop sneaking into the male dormitory. Amy sat down on the bed of our hero and exhaled because she was very scared. However, at one point she realized that now she was alone with our hero and almost lying on his bed, so she understood that it was time to go. Our hero thanked her when she reached the window because she had come all the way to him. Amy asked our hero why our hero had avoided her. He just had to tell her that someone was hurting him. It was no longer his problem, but theirs together. She remembered the words of her friend about our hero's pride, so she decided to ask him if that's why our hero wanted to tell her. But our hero said that he didn't want to leave her. She was so happy, she thought that our hero likes her as a girl. But our hero had spoiled everything. He said that he hadn't wanted to leave her, she was his high school girl. She was stunned by this information, but our hero went on to say that as soon as he came to the academy and saw her name in the first place, he wanted to do his best to catch up with her. He didn't think that it would turn out like this, because the relationship between them is already strange. So if he had said that he was being mocked, it would have been even stranger. However, Amy at that moment thought about it. She remembered the reason why she went to the academy for magic. But she could not stand it and ran at our hero, pointing her finger at him. She asked if he was joking, because what the hell is the goal? He kept repeating that he called her a high school girl with such a pretty face, even though he tried to approach her from behind. Our hero did not understand what was going on, but Amy had already come to the window and said that if he wanted to surpass her, then let him stop calling high school girl. After all, in that case, it will be in equal conditions, and if he fails, he will call her a senior for the rest of his life. However, at that very moment, our hero called her by her first name. Amy was shocked by this, because how quickly can it be done? However, turning around, she saw that our hero tells her with full confidence in his eyes that surely he will catch up with her. She smiled and said that if it is so, then he must hurry up. After all, most likely by that time she will graduate from the academy at all. Our hero, watching her going out of the window, thought that it would be wonderful if she had taught him something, but our hero had understood that every his step was watched, and everything he had to gain by his own efforts. The early transfer exam was only 1 month away. Further, the day after class, many children were talking about an early transfer, that someone is already going to a tutor. Well, we also found out that there would be about 20 participants in total. At that moment we noticed our hero who wanted to take the exam. Our hero had a lot of books with theory, because he said that he would study by himself. But there was only one thing left, the problem of application. The environment that the wizard encounters in real life is constantly changing. But for a teleportation spell, information about the location is vital. As the location changes, the amount of omnipotence and light will need to be adjusted. But this calculation only works for 10-20 square meters. Is there anyone at all who can do such calculations? But our hero was knocking himself on the head, because I am sure that the teachers would not have given such an impossible task to their students. And even the fact that Sina had said that teleportation was easy enough to learn did not make him feel any better, as he had never studied magic. He understood that 7th graders would probably be able to do it, because they were taught from an early age. They were hired the most expensive tutors to sharpen their skills. But nevertheless, the main question for our hero was whether he would be able to fill the gap at all. But at that very moment our hero realized that the principal had already answered his question before, when he was a child near that tree. And here before our eyes was the pupil who at that moment was training to pass that same teleportation exam. His teacher praised him. He could teleport. It was Slider Mark, a 7th grade student. His teacher of the 9th rank had told him that he was good at it, but that it would take more than a month to perfect it. However, if he learned all the material needed for the test and spent the rest of the time practicing, he would surely pass the exam. But Mark was mad. He said that thanks to our hero he could pass 2 classes, and he asked what our hero was doing. Immediately his servant said that he was being watched as he had asked. But he is not even training with someone, he is studying all by himself from books. But Mark was a little confused because he thought that our hero, thanks to his connections, can find a high-class tutor, or he is just pretending. So he asked his servant to continue his watching, because he did not believe that it is possible to learn only from books. Our hero almost did everything that he wanted. He had memorized every obligatory theory. He was unsure of himself, but there was too little time left. He came to one of the training grounds and began to try to use the teleport. He understood that he had no other choice, so he would only have to hope that the spell would be activated at the time he calculated. First of all, our hero had to recreate the theory with the help of the zone. After all, the person who is between omniscience and omnipotence is none other than our hero. So our hero only had to erase himself between them. Our hero saw that everything works, so the next thing he wanted to do was to teleport himself. However, man cannot calculate the necessary amount of light, because when a magician focuses, his mind becomes so sensitive that he senses everything around him. It is said that outstanding magicians can even count the number of leaves on a tree from a distance, because everything that a magician feels is a zone. Our hero understood that he only needs to feel everything around him, so that at that moment he could see everything that he could not see before. The puzzle was solved, and the skill was most likely obtained. There was not much time left before the teleportation exam, but our hero looked hurt. All the students looked at him and asked themselves, does Cheyenne train without any protection? That's when we realized that in fact his first teleportation experience had failed, so to correct his mistakes he had no choice but to take his chances. Our hero kept falling, and the days went by. He hurt himself, but he kept practicing. Our hero didn't stop. Even during the class, he kept on doing his calculations. He tried, he wrote down, he thought he was wrong, but he kept on and on. Our hero understood that all he needed was to make his body remember everything. The exam was 1 day away. Our hero had fallen again, and realized that as soon as he had corrected one mistake, another one occurred. However, at one moment he realized that he could not make more changes, so it had to work. He pulled himself together and used teleportation. And it worked, even though he had fallen a little. But how far would our hero get with that? He didn't even have time to lie down. He understood that now he had to practice binding the spell together. He wanted to practice, but he fell asleep on the floor from fatigue. We see Mark again, who thought he was enjoying himself. Today was going to be the historic day when he would go to the 5th grade. He thought the 700 meters was nothing for him. At school, while all the students were sitting in class, Mark met Maria. He asked her if she wanted to skip the exam. She got nervous and asked what she was doing. Why wasn't she on the playground? But Mark asked her if she really believed that someone like him could not pass the exam. So he asked her what she was doing at the door. She was as bad as her grades, so she should have seen what was going on in the playground. She was about to wish her luck, but Mark immediately said that she was probably laughing because she was a teacher rat. She couldn't understand how he knew, but Mark was only trying to take her for a bet. He said that's where she was burned. He said everyone already knew she was weird and modest, so it wasn't a surprise that she ratted them all out. He even pushed her to the wall and said that he had been good to her all this time because they were classmates. But he asked her if she knew what would happen when he was in high school. But he looked at her and knew that he had driven her away, so he just left. He could not understand that such a coward as she wanted to become a magician at all. She was sitting in tears, but Mark went into the classroom and asked if their plan was ready. Immediately the guys said it would be as planned. 2 of them would stick to Cheyenne at the start, and then 2 people would guard him. So they have exactly 2 opportunities to eliminate our hero. Mark said that in the first stage the distance of the jump was 10 meters, so let them hold him until at least 10 people have passed ahead. However, the students wondered if Mark would really do all that he had promised. But Mark said that he would do everything. He would find them all tutors, because his father is a technical advisor for the Association of Magicians. So if they did well, he would never forget what they had done for him. He would help them in any way he could. He knew in his heart that the plan would not change at all, for a genie should not let his guard down. At this very moment all the 7th classes had assembled on that mountain. They had not expected that so many people would gather there, especially the 5th classes. They thought only that if someone new joins them, it must be super cute. It was even all the test takers who had gathered there. The teacher realized that the time had come, for the exam for the 21 test takers would begin in 10 days. Many students had gathered and were very excited. They could not believe that the test was so hard. Even Sariel and Amy came to the test. She couldn't understand why they were there, since there were only 7th graders. However, Sariel said that it was wrong because she had to support her boyfriend to get enough points. Amy said that those who are destined to pass and those who are not will fail. But still she wondered if our hero could teleport. At this point Mark asked where our hero was, but he was told that our hero had not come at all. Our hero was sleeping in the same place where he had fallen. At that moment, Amy also noticed that our hero was really gone, but where is he? Carl was also worried because she could not find him. Then an idea came to Amy's mind. Could it be that our hero could not teleport? She immediately began to worry because she had to insist on teaching him. Many teachers were looking at it all, as well as students who were ready to begin their test. The teacher told them to follow the signal to the abyss, and if the student who will overcome the greater distance by teleportation will be the winner. But students were very frightened, because if they could not get to the other side, they would fall. They asked if there were any protective measures, but their teacher, Ted, advised them that if they were afraid, they should give up immediately. After all, everyone should be aware that many people who study magic die while they are studying it. And this is all an early exam for the sake of transfer, necessary for the choice of the student to be worthy to get into the 5th grade. In other words, they were simply advised to only take it if they could defend themselves, and if they were not sufficiently prepared, they should pass it backwards. Ted, however, was pleased with himself since many people had frozen up too much. But he knew that the ones who were dangerous were those who wanted to compete. Mark's classmates laughed, for many had volunteered to take the test, not even sure if they could make it to the finish line. He thought about how those guys would grovel before him in the future. But what was more interesting to him was whether the rumor that the guy with connections had studied teleportation by himself was true. But apparently he had screwed up. But Mark was still happy. The main thing was that his plan was ready. The teacher asked everyone to line up because she was starting the exam. But at one moment she saw our hero, who was running along the edge of the forest. He ran as fast as he could, but everyone was surprised to see him. He came running and asked if he could still take part. But at that very moment, Amy immediately took the binoculars away from Carl and asked what and where was our hero. Why was he wounded at all? Was he practicing without protection? Sina's teacher asked the principal if they could postpone the exam a little. However, the principal said that students should take care of themselves during the preparation for the test, so let everyone start as planned. The teacher said that it was time to start the exam, but she asked our hero if he was ready because he could just refuse any time. But our hero said that everything will be all right, he is ready. Mark, who saw our hero, understood that now they have to make him fail the first 10 jumps. Immediately the clock activated and everyone got ready. Everyone ran and the first second passed. We understand that all the pupils have had serious training, but this is the first time they have found themselves on the precipice. What will they feel when there is only the boundless sky under their feet? Fear, or maybe excitement, will tickle them. A real uncertainty, because they could only think of one thing. They all ran to the abyss thinking that they had to be first. But Mark knew that the winner would be the one who could correctly time the jump. It would not be possible to shorten the gap, even if you make several leaps, of course, if someone had the guts. Only 3 seconds had passed and the cliff was only 5 meters away, so the first group began to teleport. Many were approaching the precipice, but many were just giving up, and so was Mark's group. He considered them as slobs, but he was also worried a little. But our hero didn't stop. He kept running. Our hero, on the other hand, understood that it was too early to jump. Everyone thought that our hero should have jumped because he was on the very edge, But our hero did what no one expected. He just jumped off the cliff. We remember what Ryan said to our hero. He said that Shiren was really wonderful, both during the sword fight and now, and that he had never seen anyone behave so fearlessly in front of his father. Ryan asked, wasn't our hero frightened in front of Biscoff? But our hero said that it was nothing, because he had read in a book that the essence of fear is based on imagination, on the idea that you will die in a situation. For example, if you jump off a cliff, you won't die until you hit the ground. So why do we have to focus on the present instead of thinking in vain about the future? That's the only way to find a solution. Ryan didn't understand a word Shiren had said. He thought he was crazy because if he jumped from the cliff he would die. But at this point we are again taken back to our hero, who had simply jumped off the cliff. Our hero knew that he must not lose consciousness, otherwise his zone would dissipate. But at that very moment Mark saw that our hero had already overtaken him, although he had jumped much later than them. In just 1 second, our hero had everyone's mouths watering. Carl was also shocked, because Amy had told him that it was the first time our hero had used magic. She was shocked, too, because our hero was too late, but he still had a chance. She knew that Shiren would definitely be the first if he continued in the same way. Mark, however, could not understand where his team had gone, although he tried his best. And Shiren was still ahead of him. And at that time, underneath them all stood Maria Erlin, who had a talent for magic from the beginning. She remembered all the times when her grades had dropped, and it was because she had been bullied in class. She was always told that bullying on the part of peers is normal. After all, that is what gets people ahead. So that's the reason she stayed in 7th grade for 6 years. She hated competition, and most of all she hated bullying, so there was no way she could let Mark win. And in the meantime, by the end of the 3rd phase, the students taking the exam were divided into 3 groups, with Mark and Shiren in the lead. The middle group was about 3 meters behind them, and behind them was the group that had used spells before everyone else out of fear. Many did not even know how to fly, and the teachers who watched them knew that it would happen, because the students who cannot overcome fear are the first to fail. However, as soon as they fell at the very bottom, they realized that they could not even crash. It was all those who were in the last group who failed. Many of the middle group also failed. Mark understood that it had to be so, but the main thing for him was that he had not made a mistake, because the distance between him and Shiren had increased and he did not look tired at all. But he did not understand how it could happen, because at the beginning of the exam it seemed to everybody that our hero was about to fall down dead. But our hero kept speeding up over and over again. Teachers also noticed that our hero was using compulsion and repeating the same sequence of actions as if he was a machine. And other teachers noticed that Mark's actions are incredibly unstable, and it was clear at a glance because he was considered the best in his class. Sina and the director were pleased, but Ted wouldn't accept the fact that our hero is really capable. But Sariel, who was watching the whole thing, saw that our hero acted that way. She could not understand how our hero had learned to do such a thing, who had taught him such an advanced technique. Amy understood that our hero had learned it by himself. She understood that ordinary magicians learn to consciously use the unconscious area. But our hero is somehow different. She even thought that it seems that our hero directly controls the unconscious, but this is definitely not something that can be learned. But at that time Mark had already run out of strength. He shouted out loud for everyone to start. So immediately all the students decided that it was time to squeeze the mental powers out of our hero. Our hero also noticed that something strange was going on, because somebody had broken his sequence, so that immediately some guy rushed in front of his face. This guy had understood that now his life is at stake too, so he wanted to fall down together with our hero. Our hero had realized at that moment that he was really trying to hit him. But when he opened his eyes he saw that our hero had dodged, and at that very moment he was falling. Our hero was not in the best position either. Because of the disorder of the action, all his accumulated tiredness got out at once. He understood that he should not lose consciousness, so our hero just concentrated and got up again. At this time the 5th form was surprised, because what had happened with the 7th form, as their movements seemed to everyone strange. But one of the pupils said that it was for purpose. He wanted to crash into our hero. One person had to block the way, and the other one was just attacking from the side. She also said that it was just a personal tactic, simultaneously blocking both advantages of teleportation, instantaneous movement, and interdimensional jump. So if Shiren hadn't gotten out of his seat, something horrible could have happened, but this particular guy could have avoided something like that with movement stabilization. Even though the 5th grade thought the guy had gotten cocky, but they believed that the teachers should have had a plan for this situation. Mark, on the other hand, rushed forward at this point. He thought that now he was in 1st place, and he would beat everyone, even considering the 6th grade. He thought he was a genius. But our hero understood that Mark is in good shape, so if our hero wants to beat him, he has to get ahead of him. But in order to do that he would have to break his routine if he would carelessly increase the teleportation distance. Instead he will increase his speed and become half a second faster than Mark. Immediately everyone began to support who was who, they saw our hero overtake Mark. But Amy understood that our hero's body was not in perfect condition, so he should not overdo it with magic. But at that very moment something grabbed Mark. At that moment the system of the bridge that cannot be crossed mechanism was activated. A 10th level appeared. Ted immediately ran to the control room because there was no way to activate the 10th level. Sina said that they had to stop the exam, but another teacher had said that it was a test for advancement to the next 2 levels because if they cancelled it, they would receive horrible displeasure from all the families. But the principal immediately raised his voice. He asked why they were even asking such a question in such a situation. He asked them to send a signal to stop the exam immediately. Ted, who was flying, also saw the signal that our hero, that the exam had been stopped, and it was likely that a lot of problems would fall on his desk. He came to the door that led to the control desk, but as soon as he tried to open it he realized that it was locked. He realized that this was definitely no accident. He tried to open it with magic, but he noticed with the help of the zone that someone was inside. He asked me to open it, because if not, he would blow it up. But at the same moment a voice said that she didn't care, because even so no one would notice that she was gone. Ted realized that the voice was Maria, and she was in tears. He asked her to open the door because she didn't even know what she had done. He had asked her to open the door, for if she did everything as soon as possible, she would be given a light punishment. But she did not want to do it. She was sure that it was all over. After all, if Mark transferred, she would be back in hell. What was the difference between death and such a life? She kept repeating the same thing, so Ted knew it was better to let her do as she saw fit. He told her that if she didn't want to open the door she didn't have to, because he thought it wasn't that urgent in the same case. After all, just as she wanted, the exam had been stopped. Mark could not believe his eyes that the exam had been stopped, although it was too close to the transfer. But he knew that he had to win now because he could not allow our hero to backtrack. He understood that there could be no other chance to get rid of our hero. So our hero and Mark went to the very labyrinth that had appeared. Sina was shocked that they went there. Even the director was and became frightened. Why did they continue their fight? Was it just out of pride? So the director immediately said that something should be done because if it went further, it would become more dangerous. Sina was screaming, "What's Teacher Ted doing there?" But the principal was looking at our hero. He thought that he was a little different, because if he acted rashly, if he was blinded by greed, he would not be able to find the right way in this labyrinth. All the pupils were looking at all that with bated breath. They could not believe that they had gone to the 10th level, which was only for professionals. Our hero, who had noticed how the trap began to proliferate, noticed that it was too fast for him, so he did not have time to avoid one and calculate the other. At this rate he would just waste all his mental powers. Mark, on the other hand, continued to chase through the maze. He was sure that they both would be eliminated anyway, so the one who went farthest would win. But if he managed to impress everybody, then his skills would be immediately recognized. He raced ahead and thought Shiren was surprised by his technique. But Maria was still sitting at the door, asking what was the competition really about. Is it just a deception of the opponent in order to make him fail, but he himself continues to get to the top? Is this the kind of situation the Academy strives for? But Ted said it wasn't like that at all. But Mary stuck to her side. She said that he did not embellish, because what can say the teacher, who was praised for his genius? Maria did everything that the teacher said. She was patient all the time, but the Academy only recognizes talented students. And she was ordinary. But Ted said he had graduated from the Academy. But once she got to the Academy, when he was still in his senior year, he asked her if she had heard of Ted's genius. Maria had never heard of him, which made him laugh. He said he was always last and stuck in the 5th grade for 5 whole years. It was only then that he became angry at his friends because they were getting farther and farther away. Maria didn't believe it. But Ted went on to say that he had even been caught by the principal and scolded him terribly. That day Ted had had a fight with someone, but he did not want to discuss it with the principal. The headmaster told him that one thing a wizard shouldn't do is compare himself to others. He said that a wizard is a person who erases himself. He asked him to just focus on himself. Yes, and when he does, he will actually erase himself. And if he runs forward, looking back at the people behind him, he will surely lose his way. At that moment Mark, who turned forward, noticed in front of him that the way was blocked. He thought that he should not have flown here. He wondered if he was going to die. He even started screaming to be rescued. Everyone saw him going down and closed their eyes, but at that moment our hero picked him up from above. Everyone saw our hero save Mark. Everyone was shocked that someone had even tried to save someone else who was his rival. However, the others knew that it was definitely not a priority to simply win, and how could our hero make such a move? Mark, while he was being carried, our hero was shouting for help, but our hero asked him to be quiet because he was trying to think. From what he knew at that time, those traps were a kind of labyrinth. So to find the way out he had to analyze from afar the scheme according to which they were gathered. He went up to look around, but the trap followed him, and the other pupils noticed it. Our hero realized that climbing up was useless, so he decided to try to go back down. The other students also noticed it, but were still shocked that our hero was able to achieve all this by himself. Could it not be that everyone was wrong? However, all the students decided to shout words of encouragement to our hero at the same moment. Sariel couldn't believe her eyes, but Amy understood that Shiren wasn't studying to pass the exam, but to understand all the essence of magic. At the same moment, Ted was telling Maria that the competition was just a way to get to the finish line faster. It was normal to move slowly because when everyone crossed the finish line, they became magicians anyway. Maria began to cry because she realized that it wasn't over yet, and Ted would support her at any time. The principal, who had seen the whole thing through, told the teachers to go on with the exam and he would take all the responsibility. Our hero was incredibly concentrated and realized that the trap looked and moved as if it were alive. He could not even predict anything because the scheme of movement was too chaotic. And because he was trying to save Mark, his situation was getting worse. Even in the meantime, Mark kept screaming. Our hero was not still paying attention to him and understood that he had to feel the whole structure and at the same time concentrate on it. He had done it before, and it all looks like a form of evasion. Our hero immediately decided to accelerate and flew along the same trajectory. He accelerated so hard that even Mark passed out. At that moment, the director could not understand anything, even though he knew that danger increases abilities. But the limit is reached when you are satisfied with your achievements. But in our hero, the director could feel neither satisfaction nor thirst. Does that mean that he has no limit at all? But another teacher had noticed our hero's work. It was a shocking sight for her because Shiren was not concentrated on anything and he did not have any extraneous thoughts. The density of his zone was almost 99.9%. He was even able to calculate his own movement in a trance state. Although the teacher recognized Shiren's talent, but this time he was in real danger. Our hero at this time thought only about how he could overcome the labyrinth because the distance between the obstacles was less than 1 meter. But he was sure that he would not be able to overcome 10 meters using teleportation, so he decided to divide it into tens. He calculated each of his movements in a split second and teleported like lightning. He saw an obstacle in front of him and knew that he could not pass it. He saw that the gap was too small, so he decided to go through and smash it too. No one understood what our hero was doing. But only one pupil had explained that if we divide the circle into parts, then an infinite straight line is formed, and only then we split the distance into 1,000. No one could believe how it could be calculated at all. However, the student said that it was not a matter of calculation because you would just feel it. In other words, clairvoyance. It made it clear that the level of our hero's omnipotence simply shocked everyone, or simply a genius. Our hero continued going forward, but a new labyrinth appeared in front of him. Teachers called it the Labyrinth of the Dragon. Sina went to Ted's teacher, but at that moment Mark woke up. He began to shake his hands because he was afraid, but our hero tried to do just that, to remember the sequence in which the labyrinth was created. He understood that he had to move exactly in the position that he had seen. But Mark was not in the mood for jokes. He even said that he would be good if Shiren let him down. But Sina had already arrived at Ted's house. She yelled at him because what had he been doing all this time? He answered calmly that there was a problem, but Simone screamed that the device had to be stopped immediately. Ted did not understand, but Sina said that Mark and Shiren were still there. A third teacher came in and said that our hero was already in front of the jaws. Droplets of sweat were dripping from him, but before the jaws slammed shut, the shepherd decided to calm down, for he was still alive. He decided to make decisions in 1/10 of a second. In 100th of a second he was able to calculate all the ways where and where he would need to appear. But in 1,000th of a second he realized that he had been wrong. He decided to find another way, but as soon as the clock clicked, the jaws were already closed. Everybody thought that our hero was dead. They could not look at it. Director thought he had made a mistake, but our hero had found his way to the exit. Nobody could believe that he had done it. They looked at them as if they were ghosts. And our hero could not understand if he had succeeded, if he could find the way out, because he didn't even remember anything. At the same time, Ted had turned off the system so that the system was set to level 0. The other pupils were looking at all this and could not understand how our hero could pass level 10, because it was for advanced students, those who were professionals already. And our hero did not cry or shout. He just said that he really thought he was going to die. Carl, on the other hand, was rubbing it in Amy's face and saying that he had made it through, he had done it. But Amy even thought our hero was a little cool. Those who passed using all their strength would never show off or behave pretentiously. Everyone immediately surrounded our hero. They said he was really cool. They shouted that he had made it 2 classes ahead. All the 6th graders were sure to be jealous of him. But Sina's teacher, when she came with Ted, couldn't believe it either that our hero had made it. It's because of Ted's teacher. Ted asked them to understand that he had done everything he could, but Sina yelled at him, saying that he hadn't even done anything. But anyway, Sina said that they had finished the race at the same time, so they needed to confirm to the principal who really won. But the director was thinking at the time, did he have to worry at all? But nevertheless he was grateful to our hero for letting him see such a ray of light. Ted looked at the headmaster and realized that their family Milch specializes in photons and light magic and were awarded by the royal family. But the little greed that ignited in him again was only because of Shiren and his outstanding talent. Ted at that moment came up to him and said that they probably had such a person who had lit another spark in their academy. The headmaster was also crazy about the performance. He even remembered himself and his past after seeing our hero. He was greedy to the point of impossibility, and he did not believe in fate. And it was too long ago when his heart was beating as often as it is beating now. So at that moment the director came out to the students and said that only one person would pass, so he asked them to applaud whoever was able to show them, to give them that very moment of courage. Wanted to introduce them to someone who will lead the world, so that's who passed the test, it's our hero. At the same time Mark was on his feet. Everyone thought that he would ask to reconsider, because he and Shiren had come together. But he did not understand how it could happen, because he had seen with his own eyes that our hero was a real genius. He came to our hero and said that he was wrong all the time, so he asked him for forgiveness. As a magician he even admitted all his involvement. So our hero looked at him with his own eyes and said that he would receive the punishment that he thought fit. Everyone thought our hero was scary at that moment, but our hero was just tired, he just wanted to sleep. Sariel and Amy wanted to walk around. Amy thought that it was not the right time to go to our hero because he had proved everything. But at that moment our hero had noticed Amy, he shouted at her and said that he had proved everything. Our hero was not in his right mind, so he said he would catch up with her. All began to envy Amy, and she in turn blushed. But it so happened that Shiren did not remember anything, because after he woke up he had lost his memory. So it was after that our hero was transferred to the 5th grade. However, the teacher wondered how our hero went through the labyrinth. Did the dragon maze miss him? At this point, the dialogues between the students, as well as other teachers that were convened at the council, began. Many, of course, showed their negative attitude towards Maria's punishment. Perhaps because the other kids also realized their guilt, they quickly confessed to what they had done and even shared everything they had done to prevent Shiren's exam. The incident took a more serious turn, but was Maria really going to say that she was going to fulfill her promise to take full responsibility? One of the teachers said that he was also very sorry for Maria because of her unfortunate circumstances, and although she did not drive the car with the intention of harming people, the headmaster still understood that following the school rules, he was obliged to punish her. Our protagonist immediately said that he also wanted to accept his punishment because he ignored the signal to stop the exam and entered the maze. Besides, even if he didn't have much of a choice, he continued to move through dangerous territory, taking Mark with him. The principal, as well as others, did not think that working in this school they would ever see such a picture. Many children who couldn't see the truth after being caught up in rivalry, pride, and envy are now personally admitting their mistakes to becoming noble magicians. It is hard to believe that children can be raised in this way, because this is exactly what the principal taught almost every teacher in the school. As soon as the hammer was struck, many people fell down very much, and everyone began to cry, especially Maria. Many teachers even understood that this event was even more surprising than the previous ones, because now such a decision was made for the first time. It was even surprising that in the end, everyone present there was punished. Mark and Maria were suspended for 2 months, and the rest of the students were only suspended for a month, so even our head Shiren was punished. He was punished for writing a letter of remorse, but why did he even rush into the maze even after seeing that the exam was failed and suspended? Of course, our hero understood that he did not want to lose, he only thought that he had to solve the maze, although he did not remember everything in detail. The teacher only understood that her student was more belligerent than he appeared, and even outwardly very soft, but was it because he was so soft? However, while our Shiren was sleeping, he had a nightmare in his head about the maze itself, about all the eyes that were looking at him, that everything was following him. However, at one point, he started to hear the sound of the piano, but still woke up. Was it already morning? After all, if everything is so, then he should hurry to study. At one point, he picked apples and even brought Amy apples. However, because of her notes, she became very agitated and immediately ran away. A month later, of course, the attitude towards Shiren even changed, except for his girlfriend. But Amy still pretended to ignore him, so her friend even wondered if they were really dating. She said that Amy wanted to become a military officer because her specialty is targeted shooting, and many people say that such people are sent only for reconnaissance. Of course, this word is specialty. Starting in the 5th grade, you had to think about becoming a magician as your job, because becoming the best at one thing gives you more competitiveness. So most likely because of this, many people do not humiliate a person, even despite someone's low academic performance. By the time our Shiren was thinking, Nade came up to him, but despite his average academic performance, He was still quite energetic and could use electricity magic. While the two of them were talking, they were approached by two other people who looked quite formidable. They definitely wanted to discuss, but what was it about? Is it about literature, chemistry, or biology? Of course, our protagonist knew that he would not be able to support the dialogue, but at the same time, the students asked who they liked best, Teacher Sena or Athela. Our hero knew that not everyone would definitely avoid him again because of this, but it was still a rather strange question. Nate immediately asked if they thought it was such a difficult question. Our protagonist wanted to support him in this because it was a rather stupid question, but Nate immediately said that he was on Sena's side. The three of them immediately started talking about all the pros and cons of their teachers, but our hero just realized that there were guys in front of him, schoolchildren in transition, but by the time he thought about it, he was asked who he liked. Of course, Shire knew that if he wanted to live a good school life, he had to get involved in such conversations, but he still adores both teachers, so he was about to say something, but then those students left. Our main protagonist was very upset, but Nate said it was all because of Uruka, who was walking behind them. Of course, Uruki was the same person your character had never met, so at the same time, Uruki introduced himself as an outcast from 5th grade, and it was also the voice he heard when he needed advice so badly. Our Shiren immediately started shaking his hand, because he was very grateful at that time, but Uruki only said that he imagined a student like Shirena to be much more interesting. Nate immediately started apologizing for Uruki, who always talks in such cryptic ways and can say too much, but Uruki only said that he had praised our main character, and in any case, he hoped that our Shiren would try and be much more careful than he was in the past. They asked him if he wasn't coming to class, but Uruki just said he was bored. At the same time, Nate said that he was very sorry for Uruki, because Uruki is always like this, but he vouched for him because deep down, Uruki is someone you can rely on. Our protagonist said that Uruki actually looks like a good person, but Nate interrupted him, saying that Uruki is a genius, although the problem is that he is a genius in a strange way. It was at this moment that Uruki came on stage and immediately began to be conducted strange raspberry, which said that the person in front will be able to go on stage again. We'll fly apart and lie like this. However, as soon as it came out, Uruki used the split zone form with incredible speed. Everyone was incredibly surprised, so everyone realized that something strange was happening right now, and it was at this moment that Uruki created targets from these spheres and started shooting at them, so that they began to explode. Everyone was very scared, but Uruki-ish asked our Shiren for another meeting. Of course, our protagonist was also shocked by such a picture, because who is such a guy who can use both the split form and the detonation, which he specializes in. Of course, Uruka's description was a little strange, because he was the biggest outcast, very unsociable, and his grades were about average. However, the reason why Uruki is called a genius is because he only cares about one side. Uruki was incredible at physical calculations. For example, he can count what happens in an extreme situation with a full degrees, or with more than 100 million degrees, or he can calculate in 1 minute the date that will occur in 40,000 years, so if he wants, he will most likely call the number pi until his death. But on the contrary, he simply cannot succeed, he simply cannot accept anything other than the sciences. Many teachers were just shocked by this, and I can't believe that there is such a person in the 5th grade at all. Sure enough, Nade said that the teachers used to advocate taking responsibility for Uruki, but now everyone has given up. Of course, this was all very exciting for our main character, and Nade too, but at the same time, a certain girl approached them and asked him to join their group. Since our hero refused, the girls asked to approach them as quickly as possible. Of course, the main reason why he refused was because his grades were so incredibly bad. But as soon as he told him about it, Nade told him that he was the head of one of the groups where he could take him. Our character thought that this group would be successful and reliable, but at this point they went to the storeroom Istas, which stores all the healing materials of their school, or just a storeroom. Of course, our hero was a little shocked by this place, but immediately, as soon as they went inside, they saw some student who painted a full board with examples. Were transported back in time again, where Nade was sure that they could actually use absolutely everything in there. Of course, our protagonist asked if it was legal, but Nade only said that every time someone searches for something in a given storeroom, its structure changes, which only means that no one will be able to find them. Of course, Shiren was delighted with this description of the place where he was now, because a place that no one would be able to find was something with something. By then, they had reached the door that led to their study, which for some reason was called Ritualism and Ghosts. Nade, for his part, was sure that ghosts and souls, the afterlife, aliens, God, hell, and so on, were exactly what they didn't learn at their club. Of course, our protagonist thought that he probably came for nothing, but not to say that he is not interested at all. As soon as he said this, Nade immediately kicked down the door with his foot, and then a considerable amount of dust rose up. Just at this moment, Uruki appeared in front of them, who, as we know, painted the board with chalk. Nade, in turn, said that due to the group's not very good reputation, they can't reveal its members, so he didn't tell them earlier that Uruki is a member of them. Our hero was surprised that Uruki was interested in ghosts or something else, but the head of the club only replied that he was just the opposite. Came here to criticize it all as a bait for someone who thinks that everything in the world is absolutely logical. Of course, Uruki was incredibly happy to see Shiren, but he couldn't help but wonder what a great genius was visiting such an unpleasant place, because if he came there, then now they can investigate various issues together. For example, is it even possible to split an atom? Of course, our main protagonist didn't know what to answer, so he said the first thing that came to mind. Uruki at the same time said that he guessed the answer, because most likely there is a huge energy hidden in the atom. Uruki also said at that point that our main character was probably wrong, because even if people get hurt, it won't matter. Shiren immediately started shouting that no student should get hurt, because that's exactly what their headmaster said, but Uruki just took one of the berries on the table and said that he probably didn't understand the world of magic, because every wizard does what he puts others in danger, but the genius given to them, along with our protagonist, is just something with something, you need to find a use for it. Shiren immediately made a fuss, saying that he would rather become a fool than a genius who harms people. Uruki continued to stand his ground, saying that a small number of geniuses leads to a large number of fools, because this is exactly what history and the world in which they are located prove. But most of all, he hates idealism in general. Of course, our hero did not share his opinion, because ideals may well exist. Nade immediately realized that the situation was escalating, so he began to stop them from talking any further. However, it was already very late, because already Shiren realized that he would not get anything good from this club. Nade tried to stop him, but it was too late, and Uruka definitely made it happen, because they are rivals. Uruki kept repeating over and over that he didn't believe in the existence of such a genius as our main protagonist. Could he really do everything in thousandths of a second? Nade was just shocked by this, but Uruka was absolutely delighted, but he asked his friend, Nade, what he thinks about him, if he can even win the test that will be held soon. By this point, Shiren probably already realized that he was going to have a rather long battle, because the speed test is an exam in which you need to get points by hitting targets with active magic, and the exam is taken with the help of recovery mana and supporting magic, which do not attack. But due to the fact that you can go to the next level only by clearing all the goals that appeared on the level, it is very important to hit the target quickly and accurately. But there was one huge problem. Our main character simply did not know how to use active magic. He simply could not pass this test. He remembered that to get to the level of using omniscience magic, you need to get at least more than 60 points, and yet the teacher was happy because she perfectly understood his way of teaching. That he simultaneously increases his knowledge in all subjects, but there was still one area of knowledge in which he fell short to the level of professionals. This was most likely the theory of photons. Our protagonist didn't even think about it that way. He was fired up with the idea. Immediately, the teacher brought 2 books to his hands. He immediately opened it with the hope that he would succeed the first time, but later, when he opened it, he saw that although he would try to pass the test, there would still be no practical use for this magic. The teacher, in turn, said that although this magic seems outwardly useless, but in fact it has great prospects, because light is the fastest in the world and there is a need to control it. The Advanced Elephant Tower believes that the power of photons will be used in the field of information transmission, and now they are already exploring techniques for using this magic in various areas that they simply do not know about. Our Shiren thought about it, because in fact it will be an exciting study, because the magic of light definitely led a new industry. As soon as our protagonist went to the street training, he tried to use magic, but unfortunately he did not succeed. He started trying to use it again and again, but this time it didn't work. Of course, magnesium did not appear from the hands, but from the center of the spirit zone, but it was very difficult to imagine this process in detail. By the time our main character was trying to release something from his hand, a certain girl came out. Everyone was shocked by such a beauty, as well as the fact that she had just come out after training. Our Shiren's eyes were already starting to run away. It was at this point that he was introduced that it was the teacher Athela, a bishop from the famous monastic order of Karsus, who protected 12 shrines. She was the one with a very strong mind. Immediately, all the guys started saying that their teacher was just fine, that they would have an intern with her. But our character was more surprised that they would even learn magic from such a person. Athela had already figured out that they would be learning the technique of strengthening omnipotence in this lesson, so she brought their senior to teach them an example specifically for this purpose. Sure enough, at this moment, a high school student whose specialty was word magic came out. This student's name was Samuel. Many people disliked him, but there was nothing to be done, so at the same time, this disciple activated an ability called Tornado. Everyone was shocked by this power, but the boy asked not to be surprised yet, because this magic could also be improved with the help of words. He started using another spell. Everyone was expecting something truly majestic, But at this rate, 3 minutes had already passed. When everyone forgot what was going on, the Starshelkasnik was already finished, so his tornado amplified several times. He told them that if you think about the words, they will succeed, and then asked to follow him again, because now he will do everything faster. Everyone was not very happy, because again they did not want to wait for such a spectacle for 3 whole minutes, so the student just took and began to move his tongue so quickly that nothing was clear. As soon as this spell was cast, the tornado was the strongest of them all, and now no one could stand on their feet. Of course, many of the students had seen word magic for the first time, so Athela told them that they would not learn it, because instead they would learn the progression technique, a technique in which all their power is enhanced by the concentration gained by counting numbers. Of course, our main character asked if they will become stronger just because they start counting numbers. But Athela did not hide anything. She said that because the numbers contain the status symbol axioms, they are perfectly combined with the spirit zone. So at the same time, she wanted to try to strengthen the spirit zone only with the help of progression. She will call again and again, read everything more and more numbers. As soon as it started, its zone began to expand until it reached several hundred meters. The teacher said that the faster a person counts, the stronger the spirit zone becomes, not only its size, but also its power, probability of hitting the target, and even accuracy. All abilities are developed. Of course, she said that this technique is not all powerful, because if a person is actually a little stupid, then he will not succeed. By that time our Shiren understood everything, so he immediately started training. In 1 minute, he was able to count 1,000 digits, and then he thought what would happen if he could use his zone to count everything much faster. As soon as he thought about it, he immediately activated a burst of photons. He did it so well that no one could understand what it really was. After all, isn't this the activation of photons? Did someone learn to use this level of magic before the exam? Of course, Athela noticed our hero's success, so she immediately approached him. She asked if he was doing well, because if so, he should train in a different zone. As soon as our protagonist entered the training area, he was asked to call the target. Our Shiren understood everything, so at the same time, he began to understand that first he needed to strengthen the bug zone, and then use the progression method to do the rest and summon targets. As soon as the targets were summoned, our protagonist immediately started using everything he had learned. His targets flew apart in seconds. Everyone was shocked at this speed. Of course, Athela realized that this was Shiren's method of progression, that he combined numbers with large units and parsed it all in this way, that he used the modular technique of information magic. Most likely, he realized this on the last bridge that could not be crossed. It was just an incredible speed of development. As soon as this test was completed, it was written on the scoreboard that Shiren was able to select 342 targets with incredible accuracy. Many even decided to change their technique to photon activation. Of course, Nade was also surprised, because he knew that our main character could not use magic at all before, and now he received such a score. Uruki was the only one who thought it was pathetic, so he decided to participate as well. Athela didn't want to take him at first, because he was causing trouble, and our main character knew that he didn't want to meet him because he had a strange way of thinking. As soon as he thought about it, Uruki was already standing in the middle of the training hall, casting spells. It was at this moment that everyone understood that most likely our protagonist would be able to lose it in the score. And then Shiren even realized that Uruki can predict the movement of targets using equations of motion, but I still don't believe that such a thing is possible. Of course, Uruki Seattle 1 minute before 1 million. No one could believe that such a scum hid his power. But instead of going to rejoice, Uruki approached our hero and asked him if he was so surprised, because if so, then most likely he was very pitiful. Our Shiren was just shocked at such words, but still Tom was interested in how he counted to 1 million. While everyone looked on in surprise, Uruka only said that there was nothing complicated about his actions, because he only used the log system. Everyone was shocked with this, because if you thought so, then if you count log, then you can intuitively feel even the numbers of incredible digits. But even if you use this in the progression method, in which it is enough just to count numbers, then this only complicates everything once again. This is exactly the same syndrome savants. Uruka was asking Shiren if he really thought he could beat him. But our main character only said that he does everything not for the sake of victory, but all because he had one thing in front of him, an exam. Uruki certainly didn't believe it, because only weaklings say that, and you shouldn't pretend to be cool either, because Uruki doesn't have the ability to do that. Of course, at the same time, our main protagonist realized one thing, that if he wins this competition, he will be right, which Uruka confirmed, saying that the genius Shiren has a level of counting on a par with the worm. Of course, everyone thought that this show was very interesting, because the number of targets hit in a certain time becomes points. At each level, more and more goals appear, so if there is at least one passable level, then you will not be able to move on to the next one. In addition, due to the fact that the movement of summoned targets gradually accelerates with increasing level, if you cannot deal with them as quickly as possible, then you will be able to summon more targets due to the fact that you will lose a lot of points. Shiren only understood that in order to get 700 points, there was no way to miss, and it was necessary to reach level 30 in 1 minute, and for this you will need to pass each stage in 5 seconds. Of course, it was with these thoughts that he continued to achieve success. He continued to train until his result was increased by 200 points in just 1 week. Everyone knew that our main character's attack speed was incredible, but there was still Iruka who was still ahead. This time Iruka scored 1 point more. This was definitely not a coincidence. Absolutely every next day Iruka's score was 1 point higher. It was a message from Iruka about how he didn't even use all his powers. He can definitely defeat someone like our main character in peace. Of course, everyone was talking about Iruka as well as our friend Shiren. They'd tried to support our main character, but still told him that he didn't care who won because they were both his friends. But it was still very fun to watch because they both got very excited that maybe both of them could break the academy record. Our main protagonist didn't know it, or who made it anyway, so Nade still had to say that this record was set by his girlfriend at 987 points. Of course, we are back to Amy, who clearly didn't look very good. Based on the conversation with her friend, you could definitely tell that the senior class is something with something. She said that it is so difficult for her that she just thinks that they are trying to test every scrap of knowledge. She also said, after calming down a bit, that the graduating class is like the 5th, so her friend's abilities will definitely be enough. Of course, Amy asked what Shiren was up to, but her friend was shocked because really this couple has never met with each other. However, since she asked, she still needed to tell her best friend about her boyfriend's progress. As soon as that was said, Amy realized that Iruki had probably hit on her back in 5th grade. 2. That he pretended to be perfect and couldn't understand people's feelings, and when provoked, he annoyed the person by using his feelings expertly. Of course, the friend asked Amy to help her boyfriend, but Amy said that she should not worry about such a person. Of course, her friend started to say that she should help, but Amy once again calmed her down, saying that Shiren would definitely cope on his own. By the time they were talking about everything, many people were watching how Shiren managed to break the 700-point mark. No one believed that this mark could be obtained in 2 weeks of training. Iruki continued to smile and grin, but all Amy was saying was that if she continued to compete with Iruki, she would definitely lose, even though she holds the record. Of course, Iruki again broke the record of our main character, who for some reason was now sure that he could not win. It was already evening. Our main character was sitting in his room and thinking only that there would be exams this weekend. There were only 3 days left, but he couldn't find a way to surpass Iruki should he really give up. But as soon as Shiren remembered those very words, all that he had experienced, he decided to hope for the best again. He even began to accept that Iruki was right and that he just couldn't give up so easily, because in order to surpass Iruki, he would have to go beyond numbers. So what are numbers? What are progression methods? What is its essence? He realized that just numbers didn't make sense, because once you were locked in your thoughts, you wouldn't be able to see more, so you just had to feel. How far can he even count and walk? What number might appear out of bounds? However, so far our main character only continued to count until something sucked him inside. Of course, after such a moment, 40 hours have already passed and the test time has come. Many people were shaking. Even the senior classes came. Everyone was tense with this situation, but the main event was the battle between Iruka and our Shiren. Of course, a lot of people were betting, but a lot of people were worried until it was time for Team 20, which included Shiren and Iruki. Everyone asked for silence, even shutting up Nade. Of course, the teacher also noticed that it was for these two that the audience gathered. As soon as the test began, both characters began to shoot down targets with incredible speed. Many people were shocked by Iruka's performance, but only a friend of our main character noticed that our Shiren had a few more points. Everyone thought that this was Iruka's game again, but he was now sure that everyone misunderstood because he was putting all his strength. But what did our main character do in the last 3 days? The teacher at this time understood that although the path that a person walks for the first time may seem long, but you can move faster on a well-trodden path, also with a score, so most likely Shiren went too far. He was really crazy. Of course, our protagonist continued to release photons at an incredible speed, and the teacher noticed our Shiren's strategy. But there was only one drawback: he could not be distracted by anything. The whole crowd just exploded. Everyone started to get as fast as possible. So even Iruka decided that he had to use the full potential of his brain, with which the speed of light was cultivated. Everyone noticed that Iruka has 2 zones at all. The teacher couldn't believe it, because was it really possible to think and calculate everything so quickly? Everyone definitely thought this was the end, that Amy was right about Iruka, that it was just bad luck for Shiro. But our main character couldn't believe it, because really now he has reached his limit, can't he do anything more? But as soon as he thought about it, he realized that he was only being held back by the fact that he was in fear. He realized that he needed to step over himself and think only about numbers. As soon as the barrier was broken, a field appeared around our main character, which cleared everything in its path. Everyone thought that it would probably end in victory for Uruka, who couldn't understand why time was taking so long. As soon as the end of everything was announced, Uruki thought that he had achieved a good result of 1247 units, but everyone immediately ran up to Shiren, asking if everything was alright, because if so, then he was able to win as well as break the record. However, at the same time, Uruki came over and held out his hand to Shiren, telling him that he had won and that our hero wasn't so boring, and then confessing that he was right about everything. Our character couldn't believe it. But still Uruki said that if the charge is controlled, then nothing will happen. Even if the shell breaks, someone must be responsible for it all, so from now on, Shiren is responsible for a person like Uruki. Of course, at that moment, everyone was repeating what Uruka had said about charges being out of control, but still, every particle has its opposite. Who does your character belong to? Is it fear or strength? After all, if that's the case, then only Shiren should stop such a huge force as Uruki. Of course, our main character could believe Uruki, because he saw all the fear in his eyes, and then shook his hand and said that he would stop him if his strength reached incredible heights. As soon as they were done, Nade came to support his best friends as usual, but our hero was briefly taken in by the teacher, who asked if she knew where Shiren was at all. She said that it was impossible to enter that space at all, because if you enter there, you can lose your composure. She said that many people call this reality nirvana. Of course, everyone understood that people can reach infinity, but those who reach it turn into nothing, and among all that our protagonist could see, he saw a huge void that sucked him in. This is the picture that our main character dreamed about almost every day after he got there, but now he feels something strange about his body. Of course, the first thing he did was go to Nade and Uruka, saying that it seemed like he was being haunted by ghosts. Of course, no one could understand why he spoke so seriously about this topic, but Uruka immediately started asking questions, because did all the things he said really happen in his dream, those stars, the vast void, and the vibrating thing at the end? After all, if that was the case, then most likely it was a number that could not be calculated, it was all outside of space. Of course, Shiren was thinking about the same cosmos that appears in all stories and such, but how can you even see something in your dreams that you've never seen before? However, Nade said that he had heard that 200 years ago many people talked about how you can transfer your soul, or rather tried to conduct an experiment. Many people tried to conduct this experiment, but it was closed due to inhumanity, but still many confirmed that people after such an experiment remembered and saw something that they had never seen before. Many even said that it was all true. But while Nade was just trying to intimidate our main character with his stories, Uruki replied that this now explains everything. Because if Shiren's soul was ionized with electricity and caused a quantum phenomenon, then it is possible to transfer beyond the cosmos. It was an incredibly small world that Uruka was talking about. Had his soul become so small that it could make its way into the atoms? Of course, now Shiren was just thrilled with this hypothesis of his new club, so Uruka also asked our main character to be honest with them, because now can he tell them what really happened? Our character told them everything, and his Uruka was very happy with it, and he started laughing, because that's what his father told him, and he told him about the number that is the key to everything. It was after these words that our protagonist decided to join the club, which made Nade very happy. He said that he signed all the papers as soon as possible, and then they will mark everything in the cafeteria. No one would have believed that Shiren would even join their group, or even join anything at all. But still, the most dangerous teacher found out about it. That's how this video ends. If you have sat through to the end, please don't forget to press the subscribe button and leave feedback. See you in the next video.